Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 43 of ThROH The Years, the podcast that reviews Ring of Honor show by show from the beginning. As always, I'm Trevor Dame. As always, he's Matt Feuerstein. Matt, it's been a while, but as you were just telling me off air, we still got it in February, unless this episode gets delayed in posting like 20 days for some weird reason, or we're recording this on the 22nd. So.
You would need 7 days of delay.
Yeah,
but
I exaggerated too much. But yeah, it's been not a great month for some of us, but it's been hectic. But we're through it. We're here. We're through the month, which is our spin-off podcast where we talk about our medical ailments and our fears and anxieties. And that's also a once-a-month show.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it would probably be pretty compelling to hear two white men living in rich Western countries complain about their problems. Definitely, everyone wants to hear it, right? But until then, I guess we just got to talk about Ring of Honor.
Matt, forget about Ring of Honor, Matt. You won't believe it. They had these raspberries I really liked on sale for $2.99. They put them out of stock the second the sale ended and went back to $4.99. They're back in stock. Like, if that isn't one of the biggest tragedies of modern Western civilization, I don't know what it's meant.
It's literally a first world problem.
Okay, but a first world problem you won't have is a lack of good quality wrestling audio content to listen to if you subscribe to the Pro Wrestling Only Podcast Network, the network we are on right now. So many good shows. I always like to point out one, but the one I've been pointing out a lot lately is the Pro Wrestling Super Show, which I'm going to have to do again because, Matt, you are on it again for an episode where you guys debate the best gimmick match.
I am officially a regular on that show, a panelist, you might say. Like it was, I don't know, the McLaughlin Group. Just call me Clarence Page. Do not call me Pat Buchanan.
I was going to say the only one I know is Pat.
Do not.
From the SNL skits.
Do not.
But we also have another thing to plug, which is, Matt, you were on the 5-Star Match Game, our old friend Joe Gagney's wrestling quiz show with our friend Justin Shapiro and Andrew Rich, who hosts the Great Music of the Matt podcast. And yeah, I won't give away the results, but I think fans of the show should definitely listen to that too.
Yay! What happened? I don't know. Listen.
No spoilers, but I mean, look, whether Matt wins or loses, or a 3-way tie happens with no tiebreaker, because that's the way Joe runs things. He's a hard. If so many of the episodes end in ties, people who don't listen to the show don't realize that he just goes, look, I can't even ask another question. I have no follow-ups. This is what I've got. If the score's tied, it's an unsatisfying ending. No rematch. That's it.
He's actually planning on renaming it the 5-Star Tie Game. five tie match game. Oh yes, that's true. Also, 5-star ties.
Love that in details. But so yeah, those are the shows, and Matt, it's kind of crazy that like I think the thing we always do with this show is we do it when we have time, when we feel like it, which is, it's a show, we always say it's not time sensitive, it's evergreen, as they say. And so we don't charge, we won't ever charge for it. And so hopefully the one thing we can promise is we're doing this when we're enthused about it and we're not burning ourselves out on it. But it is kind of amazing that we've slowed a little bit on it. And so now, like, you're probably going to do more episodes of the Pro Wrestling Super Show this year, or in a certain time frame, than of this show, which is your show.
I don't think that's going to happen, but because we're about every 2 months on that show. Although you're right, there was 3 months in a row. Now that you mention it, so but we didn't do one in February, but I think we do have another one planned for March. So stay tuned.
And likewise, like a show like an honorable mention, which covers Ring of Honor. They started after us. We're on episode 43. I think they're well over 100 now. So.
They record literally every week and do bonus Patreon content. And listen, we're just not that good. We're not such good people. So that's the main thing. At least speaking for myself. So that's really the main thing you have to know about this show. I'm just not that good of a person. So I cannot promise you the content with the frequency that you deserve it.
Yeah, they're the machines. We're like putting out this handcrafted zine that when we can get around to it. What we're covering today is Ring of Honor Reborn completion. But before we get to that, we're not going to cover this show, but there was an afternoon show on the day of this event called Do or Die 3. Ring of Honor put out a DVD with both it and the Do or Die 2 pre-show that happened in 2003. That's like every Ring of Honor release long out of print, although I see you can get it on eBay for $10 right now plus shipping. We'll run down the card. I'll note that it took place at the Rex Place, which is the same thing that the main show will run at, in front of a reported crowd of 400 people with tickets at $5 a head. The card was the Outcast Killers beat Gabe Roach and Mike Fox in 411. Daisy Hayes beat Allison Danger in 428. The Ring Crew Express beat our old friends at the Texas Wrestling Academy, Don Juan, and I believe one we haven't seen in Ring of Honor, Jared Steele in 617. Tony Kazina defeated Angel Dust in 812. Rain Man defeated Sean Daivari in 756. Colt Cabana beat the Christopher Street Connection in a two-on-one handicap match in 504. Then Colt Cabana wrestled Caprice Coleman, current Ring of Honor commentator, beat him in 812. Matt Seidel beat Delirious in 1301.
A never before seen match and a never again seen match between those two.
Definitely not like a touring match they did ad nauseum all over the place.
Nope.
Brian Gamble and Joshua Masters went to a no contest in 447 when Homicide hit the ring and destroyed both guys. So great little showcase for them. And then your main event was Josh Daniels defeating B-Boy in 1007. So I should note that on the DVD release for Ring of Honor Reborn completion, it was a double DVD set, and because they had some extra time, they actually put the Seidel Delirious match and the Daniels B-Boy match at the end of the DVD as like an extra bonus. Because this DVD was already like a longer than normal show, and we usually don't cover pre-matches anyway, I did not watch those matches and will not be covering them.
Nor did I. This was a very long show.
Yes, but just to let people know, if you listen to this and decide to go out and get the DVD, you are getting like another extra couple matches on top of a longer than average show on a double DVD set. So in terms of just amount of content, depending on the price you get this for, it's a good pick for that, if nothing else. But was it a good pick for anything else? We are about to find out, because the show today is Ring of Honor Reborn completion, which took place July 17th, 2004 at the Rexplex in Elizabeth, New Jersey, in front of a reported crowd of 825 people, so a little over double who went to the pre-show, apparently.
And clearly, noticeably less people than at the last show at the Rexplex. Like, you could see a lot more empty spots in the bleachers as you watched.
And it's something we will get into in the next couple of shows, but Ring of Honor had a double shot in the Midwest the following week, so that'll be our two next episodes, and I'm saving more of that information for those episodes. But I believe Ring of Honor was hoping to draw 3,000 people between the three shows, and they do not come close to that. So, and I think this is the best crowd of the three. I think maybe. I forget what Chicago does, but we'll find out when it happens. But
yeah, it's interesting times for ROH, because in some ways it's a lot of good stuff happening, and in some ways a lot of disappointing stuff.
Yeah, exactly. PW Insider wrote at the time, it appeared the crowd for 717 was in the 800 range. Just to note, I'm using as always, just to be consistent, the Observer range, the numbers, which who knows if they're always right, but I always just try and stay with a consistent one source. So when I compare them, I'm always comparing to the same source. Ring of Honor officials were ecstatic because they did tremendous merchandise sales at the show. The promotion felt that it was due to the amount of new Ring of Honor releases they had available and the addition of new products such as Ohio Valley Wrestling tapes and DVDs. Ring of Honor's online ordering is set so any merchandise ordered before 3 p.m. is mailed the same business date, which has been getting raves from online fans. And in fact, in the Observer at that time, the Observer wrote, business for Ring of Honor has been hot for the opening of the new company in video sales, as they've gotten the tapes released with a far quicker turnaround, which was the big problem. So Ring of Honor is definitely getting the word out that, like, look, we're away from Rob. The service is better. I believe when I was doing research for the show, there was even a thing in the newswire that was like, someone from Britain ordered a DVD from us, and they said they got it within a week. Like, they were really pushing, like, look, it's not going to be slow like it was before.
They said it on commentary even on this show, that if someone from Britain ordered it, and they were mentioning the whole 3 p.m. thing. I wonder how long that 3 p.m. thing stayed in effect, because I don't think it was for forever. But maybe not. Maybe it was. I don't remember too well. Because I do remember I live pretty close to Philadelphia, relatively speaking, and I got my DVDs usually pretty quickly, except for the newest of new releases. Sometimes, maybe they just weren't available yet when I ordered them.
Yeah, I ordered, obviously being West Coast Canadian, my shipping times were worse, but I never felt they were that bad. And the one time they got the order wrong, they got a replacement free of charge without asking questions. I actually feel like maybe one of the reasons, or maybe I'm just putting too much of my own personal experience in here, but I know this was the era I started buying Ring of Honor DVDs regularly, because before this, I had heard enough bad things about both Rob Feinstein and RF Video service and quality that I was kind of scared. And so once, after probably a month or two after this, once I really got word that, like, oh, people are saying good things about this. Obviously, as you can tell from this reporting here, they were getting out news out to the newsletters at this time that, like, look, sales are good, people are happy, the shipping's quicker. And I believe that a lot of people are like, why did sales pick up just because Rob left? But I feel people forget, if you didn't come up from that time, that RF Video did kind of have a bad reputation that I don't think our ROH Video really had.
Yeah, I would agree with all that.
And finally, the last little news where I think we should get to, this is something that isn't shown on the show, and it's another thing we'll get to a few shows down the line. But Ring of Honor had this thing they were plugging for the show. I'll just go to the Ring of Honor newswire on July 16th, which they said Dave Prazak, because Dave Prazak was working the show as a backstage interviewer, I think, or he said Dave Prazak, or maybe just ring it out. I forget what he was at the show. But anyway, Dave Prazak's announcement tomorrow night at the Rexplex isn't what anyone expects. And so if you're wondering what was the announcement, if you're reading old newswires like me on archive.com, what the announcement was that Mick Foley would be making his Ring of Honor debut at the next New Jersey show, which would have been Glory by Honor 3, I believe. And they said, we'll get into this on that show, but I believe they said it was the fastest tickets ever moved was at this show, up to this point, was at this show during intermission when they announced that Mick Foley was coming. Apparently that was like the biggest run on tickets they've ever had at a show when they've announced the next show.
It's so interesting. Times have really changed, because, like, I don't know if there's anything that could happen now at an indie show like that would be equivalent, of like a retired, recent stars just showing up at an event, like, do you think that could happen now too, where that would cause big movement in tickets?
I'm not sure. I don't think there's as much of a divide between like veterans and indie guys. They mingle a lot more often now, and even a lot of times, there's a whole cottage industry, especially around like WrestleMania season, of booking like the aging veterans in actual matches. Right, in matches, yeah. Like I was thinking just to actually earlier today, I was going to bring this up. Like, I think a good way to, and it's a bit of an apples and oranges comparison, but a way to show you how much wrestling has changed and what we're talking about is a few shows from now, this in 2004 for Ring of Honor, they're going to do a big show built around a Midnight Express reunion, and they're even going to call the show Midnight Express Reunion. And it's literally just going to be the guys getting in the ring, having a segment and having a reunion. Where nowadays, cut to like 15 years later, the Rock and Roll Express, their contemporaries, are not only still wrestling, they're like wrestling LAX and New Japan top, like, current generation stars. Right. Like what was a time for wrestlers mingling back then? Nowadays, we just expect they're going to wrestle them, right? Yeah, that's true. As you were talking, though, I was thinking about, like, examples. Like, I guess if they had, like, if an indie, like, said CM Punk was going to be on a show, that would probably move tickets, right? Or like, like the biggest movie star in the world, like, right? Like The Rock or like John Cena or someone like that. But so I guess that probably would still work now that I think about it. Like if like PWG even was like on the next show, like John Cena is going to be here. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I think it would have an effect on interest, right? Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think there would be I think a guy like that, especially because he doesn't really fit in, like it's a guy you would never expect. But yeah, any major star. I'm trying to think of someone that wouldn't. Like, how low on the WWE totem pole would you have to go before they wouldn't make like a noticeable increase in buzz? Like,
well, I don't know, like how big of a deal,
like Dolph Ziggler.
but like I don't know how big of a deal like Kane or the Big Show would make. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they're stars definitely, but like, would people, fans of those promotions, like go out of their way to go just because one of them was going to be there? Probably not, right?
No, although I do think there would be more increased curiosity from the people that were already going to PWG shows, but I don't think you'd get something like Ring of Honor had in 2003 when they announced Jeff Hardy, and all of a sudden not only do they draw a record crowd, but you hear a bunch more screaming female voices that you never hear on another Ring of Honor show. Like, I think, going to your point, yeah, you wouldn't hear – there would not be a bunch of diehard Kane fans that went to the first PWG show just to see him.
Just to scream when he takes off his shirt.
Just hoping desperately that PWG sprung for, like, pyro.
Mayor Jacobs!
I love your politics, Glenn. You wouldn't hear that probably. Well, I don't know. California's pretty split. But yeah, so that's the news for the show. Let's get to the show proper. We start with Sugar Sean Price backstage with Samoa Joe. Joe wonders why we haven't seen a Samoa Joe's ring segment in a while. Joe says when you're feuding with a guy like Homicide that pushes you too far, it's hard to convince people to step in the ring with you. Then Joe says many people tonight are calling his match tonight the biggest six-man tag in the history of Ring of Honor. Joe puts over his partners, the Briscoes, as two tough sons of bitches who wrestled him in the past and survived, and says tonight will be the biggest war ever in the Ring of Honor ring.
He said this will be the biggest war ever to set foot in that ring, and I'm like, do wars set foot in places? But hey, it's personification.
Also, I was like, you're selling this a little too hard, Joe. Like, I know what this match is.
Yeah.
But Gabe says, cut from behind the camera, and we get our usual Ring of Honor, oh, the promo's over, but the camera keeps rolling thing.
This is where you get to see the real shit, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And at this point, Hydro walks in. Hydro says, people were telling me that you wanted to see me, Joe. Joe says Hydro is one of those Special K clowns, and he asks Hydro if he likes to party. Hydro smiles. He says, yeah, I do. And Joe tells him his problem is he doesn't party like a champion. Joe at this point grabs Hydro. He gets very intense by the neck, and he pushes him against the wall. And Joe says he isn't going to lie. Hydro has skills, but if he wants to get serious and to do it like the champions do, he needs to cut out all the bullshit. Joe asks him, what kind of name is Hydro? Everyone knows that the outdoor stuff is the best anyway. Joe then says, but Hydro, you'll never know that unless you get your act together. At this point, Matt, in my notes, I wrote, wait. Joe is saying Hydro will never know that outdoor grown marijuana is better than hydroponic grown marijuana unless he takes pro wrestling more seriously. And I wrote question mark.
Because that's only something that champs know.
Only champs can afford the small price difference in outdoor grown marijuana.
I know nothing about the difference between the prices of those products, Trevor. Just so you know.
I live in British Columbia, so I have to know regardless of whether I ever have smoked it or not. But anyway, Hydro nods his head, and Joe tells him to have fun in the ring, but remember what he said, and most importantly, don't ruin what you've got. Joe then leaves Hydro to reflect on all of that. So that's the segment. So basically, we're entering phase 2 of the Hydro push, which is phase 1 was just showing him still part of Special K, but kind of taking his matches more seriously and not wanting to party. Phase 2 is basically we're entering, which is he's going to ditch the Hydro name tonight, go to Jay Lethal like he was elsewhere on the indies, and basically start to become, I don't know what you would say, Joe's protege, I guess?
Protege, yeah. Then they literally call him that. But I do think it's kind of funny, though, because basically the angle goes like this. Joe goes up to Hydro. He's like, you got to change your ways. You know, you don't party like a champ. You got to take it seriously. And basically Hydro just goes, okay, and immediately changes everything that very same night. Like, doesn't no consternation involved. It's just like, next time we see him, he's Jay Lethal wearing Jay Lethal clothes, acting like Jay Lethal. I think that's a little bit funny. Like, it's like kind of rushed. I mean, not that it really matters that much. Not like I'm like, man, this angle would have been so much better if they built the Jay Lethal anticipation. But it's still funny, just that like Joe like gives him this big talk, and it's just like instant. Like he's just Jay Lethal now. This is obviously way too soon in the timeline, but I was thinking today it would have been hilarious if then
Hydro tonight came out as like, I'm gonna be myself. I'm gonna be like a chap. And then he came out as Black Machismo. And then Joe was like, that's what I was looking for, kid. And there's like a single tear rolling down his eye. Like, I can dig it now.
I think if Jay Lethal knew that he had that in him, they possibly could have done that.
If Jay Lethal came out today as Black Machismo, he honestly might never revert back to Jay Lethal, because I think there's such more of a market for these kind of comedy gimmicks. Like, he would have his own Black Machismo themed WrestleMania weekend indie show this year.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yes, I'd say Black Machismo's Macho Elbow Party. Ooh yeah, 2020.
Black Machismo's Mo Cheese Bro Nacho Macho Nacho Party is what I came up with.
Well, yours is much better, so.
I was either having a stroke or coming up with something, but
oh yeah, dig it.
So the other thing I guess we should note before we get to the first match is, since this was a double disc set, Ring of Honor does what they often do for double disc sets, which is they fill up the extra time with a ton of recap clips from other shows, and that happened a lot between these shows. So for this time, it's basically a lot of what's occurred in the last, I guess, in the Reborn era of Ring of Honor, the last few months, and we won't be covering any of those just because we've already covered all those actual matches and segments on other shows, so there's no point. But just to let you know, again, that's another thing that kind of beefs up this release to a double disc set. And that brings us to our opening match of the official card. Generation Next of Jack Evans and Roderick Strong defeat Special K of Dixie and Izzy, who are escorted to the ring with Angel Dust, Becky Bayless, Cheech, and Hijinks. They win in 8:59 when Evans pinned Izzy after hitting a 630. And I guess, Matt, before I throw it over to you, one thing I found doing research for the show that I either didn't know or forgot was there was actually a time where this match almost didn't happen, as we'll go to the Ring of Honor Newswire, which wrote, due to a transportation error, Jack Evans will not be able to make this Saturday's event. We apologize for the lineup change. Evans will be at Death Before Dishonor, and which is the next weekend of double shot shows. Generation Next is said to be furious at Evans. It will now be Roderick Strong versus Izzy on Saturday in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And then the day before the show, the Ring of Honor Newswire goes again. Jack Evans is back on for tomorrow's show at the Rexplex in Elizabeth, New Jersey. It will be Evans and Strong versus Special K. This is a very important match for Special K, who have been in a terrible slump since losing Scramble Cage 2 on March 13th. Special K might even be in jeopardy of losing their spots, and there's been growing dissension in the group. It is even questionable as to whether Hydro is even a part of the faction anymore. Meanwhile, Generation Next is putting the pressure on Evans to score the victory. So I don't know, Matt, if this was the very first time ever Jack Evans and Roderick Strong teamed up. It was in Ring of Honor as a dedicated tag team, but it's interesting that we almost didn't get it. But whatever transportation problems there were, they got fixed.
Yeah, and it's the beginning. I think, they're a pretty legendary tag team in early ROH history. I don't think they teamed together, just the two of them, like a lot of times. Maybe like 10 or less, but probably less actually. But they, every time they did, it was pretty memorable.
Yeah, what did you think about this match? This match is kind of notable for what happens to one of their opponents, I would say.
Yeah, well, okay, so as far as like a showcase, this was pretty good. Like in terms of the, Evans and Strong, they got to debut a bunch of double team stuff. In particular, the Ode to the Bulldogs, where which is one of their most famous moves. It's where Strong has one guy on his back in almost like a torture rack position. Evans comes off the top and jumps onto that guy and moonsaults off of him onto the other guy. Later, he would turn it into more of like a twisting, almost like, well, it'd be more of like a twisting like Phoenix Splash in subsequent versions of that move. But that move got a huge pop. As far as the match itself, otherwise, there was some big moves. There's some sloppiness. Dixie, like, he botched a Rana pretty early. It was a lot of Punk, like, making fun of Jack Evans' gear, even though he was just wearing gym shorts at the time. I thought that was pretty weird. Yeah. just Evans doing his twisting presses and the chopping that Roderick's doing. I don't know. Did you notice that Roderick was already starting to look like a little bit kind of like he was leaning up already? Because when he first debuted, he was kind of plump, and obviously over the next year, he becomes much closer to the Roderick we know now. Not quite, but could you tell that he was already starting to look a little toner? It would seem that way to me.
I didn't really notice, but I didn't get that reaction that I did the first time I saw him in Ring of Honor on a recent show where I was like, that's like real baby fat Roderick Strong. So either I'm getting used to it, or you're correct and he's starting to shed a little bit of that.
Yeah. Izzy looked a lot better than Dixie, I thought, in terms of his moves. Like he was apparently something happened to one of their opponents that I don't know what you're referring to. So I guess it didn't. Either I didn't pick it up, or was it something that was reported after?
No.
What I did notice was that what they're doing with Special K, which is that they all seem depressed, like and that led to an angle later where some of them are like, well, it's not ready time to party yet, but. The other thing that you're possibly thinking of is what happened to Becky after the match.
No, actually, what I was thinking of is just how badly Dixie's chest gets chopped. And
Yes.
It gets all marked up, and they show it on the interview segment near the end of the night. But it's one of those things where I think it was worse like in photos, because I remember looking at the recap or like the results of this show or something like that right after it happened at the time. And I remember seeing pictures of his chest, and it just looked disgusting. And even as this match goes on, you can see it getting red, but because the camera, this isn't HD at this point, you don't get a really great look at it. But like Punk and Gabe are commenting on it as it happens, and his chest, when you see it in the promo at the end of the night, it's very like marked up bad.
Yeah, Roderick gets to show off his chopping skills too, for sure, and obviously Dixie is the one who gets the brunt of it. It's hard to say. Like, it might just be like Dixie's skin type that just like reacts very strongly to that compared to other guys, because it didn't seem like Roderick was doing much different to him than he normally does. Like, he was chopping him hard, but he always chops guys hard. I don't know.
He could be like a Bryan Danielson type, where you just have that special kind of pale skin where, like, someone could just slap you reasonably hard, and it's just immediately going to turn red and show a mark.
Yeah. This is like my hypochondria stuff too. Like, if I'll notice sometimes, like I'll look at my arm or something, and it'll be like really red, and it will be like, oh my god, do I have a rash? And then I'll go away like in an hour, and I'm like, oh, it's just like because I was like rubbing my arm, like just like some people's skin just reacts like that.
Yeah.
But I did mention the whole Becky thing, because violence against women. They picked that up real quick here. So right after the match, I guess you want to talk about the match first, but I do want to mention this because basically Special K has basically Generation X beats up Special K. Becky's on her knees begging. And Gabe is like, this isn't the first time she's been with 4 guys. And then Strong does like a pump handle backbreaker, and they treat Becky with such disrespect, like not just the violent stuff, because obviously that's something ROH does for worse, but just the way they talk about her. It's like, man, if I was her, I would not like playing this character. They're not very nice to her on kayfabe terms, I guess, is what I would say. Other thing I want to mention is this show, even though Death Before Dishonor comes the following week, I feel like this show is actually the spiritual successor to Death Before Dishonor, because it's about a year between them. They're both at the Rexplex. They're both super long, super stuffed shows with big angles, and they both start with Special K getting their asses kicked.
Well, then again, probably a lot of shows, if we look back, started with Special K getting their asses kicked, but that's actually a good point.
Yeah.
I like this match. I think it's above average, but like you said, it wasn't quite as good as my memory was. I think my memory of this match was higher just because it was my first exposure to Evans and Strong as a tag team. And I really am a big fan of the Evans Strong tag team. I'm a fan of any tag team. Like, I realized rewatching this show and other shows recently that, like, I'm a big fan of the tag team of opposites rather than like the Road Warriors type tag team. Not that those can't be great, where it's 2 guys who look the same, wrestle the same. I like these kind of teams where each guy has what the other guy doesn't have.
You're a Heart Foundation guy.
Yeah, exactly. I love stuff like that. Like, I love, or a team like this where Evans has all the personality and charisma you could want. That was Strong's weak point. Strong is the guy throwing people around, hitting them really hard, doing all the backbreakers, while, Evans doesn't have the credibility to do anything like that, but he has all this cool high flying. Like each guy gives the other guy what they're lacking. Or like you said with the Hart Foundation, perfect example. Brett's the technician, but at that point his charisma wasn't really developed yet. And then Anvil, isn't maybe the technician, but he's this big, beefy, ultra charismatic dude, just a living cartoon character. So I really love teams like that who are opposites. I think already in this match, you see how they blend well together. Like you said, they already pop off multiple double teams that, like, not just double teams, but double teams that emphasize their strengths. Like, I think there's one where Strong has a guy up for a power bomb, and then Evans hits a drop kick on the guy, and then that drops them into the Roddy's power bomb, which lands the guy on the knee. So it's like Evans is doing his high flying move, combining it with Strong doing his big backbreaker move, and just stuff like that. Or the Ode to the Bulldogs, which I thought one of the weird parts of this match, along with with like you said earlier, the botches, including there was one move where Strong got hit really hard in the face, legit, in this match, it looked like. I think Izzy hit him really hard, that maybe not how it was planned. But I think the other thing about this match that was a bit that I forgot was they pop off Ode to the Bulldogs for the first time. And like you said, the crowd goes nuts over it. And it's not the finish of the match, which seems kind of like a big mistake. Like, not that they killed the crowd, but there's nothing they do after that is bigger than that move. Like, that is clearly the high point of this match for the crowd.
Yeah, it doesn't go on that much longer, but yes, I having not seen this match in a very long time, I also thought that was going to be the finish of the match, and was very surprised when it wasn't.
But it's a fun match where it's just a sprint, and they're just doing cool, crazy stuff and trying to, it's a fun way to start the show.
I thought Dixie in particular was pretty sloppy here.
Yeah. Again, I thought also even Izzy with the kick, I noticed that was too hard. But yeah, there was more botches than you would normally like, especially from Dixie and Izzy, who are kind of the senior Special K guys, who are generally considered the more polished guys of the group.
They had that epic tag team title reign.
Yeah. Look at my notes. Something else we should mention. Mark Nolte did not commentate the show. He'd be back for future shows, but it's CM Punk with Gabe Sapolsky. And Punk on commentary right off the bat, he brings up multiple times how glad that Nutley, as he keeps calling him, isn't there. He immediately just goes to complaining about how he pronounced Colt Cabana's name wrong on a recent show. He made fun of him for saying, I don't want to hear about how the mustard's going to fall off the hot dog, which is a saying Nolte used multiple times on recent shows. And he continues to bring him up multiple times throughout the night, to the degree that I started thinking that Punk really had a problem with Mark Nolte's commentary.
It seems so.
And like you said, I also noticed that Punk mocked Jack Evans' gear, which that also goes hand in hand. I mean, I noticed a lot of people back in this era mocked Jack Evans for not wrestling in ring gear. But like you said, I thought it was weird considering that Punk, got slagged all the time in this era for wrestling in basketball shorts. And I know in a shoot interview, Kevin Steen at the time, remarked about how, like, Punk, I think early on, made fun of him for wrestling in a t-shirt and tried to guilt him out of doing it. And again, it's kind of weird that Punk was the guy who, that was a big criticism of him for a few years, and yet it seemed like he was doing onto others as others were doing onto him, Matt, and not in a nice way. But
yeah, listen, man, take a look in the mirror. Take a look at those nice shorts you have on in the mirror.
And the other one, my last note from this match, going to commentary, was I noticed during this match, Punk says at one point, Izzy is beating these guys like he owes them money. And I just think you got that. like
I didn't notice that.
Maybe that's a good strategy. Maybe that's a good way to not have to repay anybody. If someone comes near you and wants some money back, immediately just start throwing haymakers at them.
Yeah, where's my money? Ow!
If only Colt had done that, they wouldn't have had this loss of friendship. Maybe just taking that advice. But yes. Like you said, after the match, we get a Generation Next beatdowns. Becky Bayless. We get our man-on-woman violence with the big breaker, which I do have to note did get a large pop.
It sure did, from heels doing it.
Yeah, the heels beating up the one. Oh, and I want to mention, too, about the Becky Bayless thing, because I thought you made good points about how badly she was treated in the booking and on the commentary. I think one reason, Matt, why it comes off even worse is, like, we look at Alice in Danger, and she also got, in a lot of ways, similar treatment, but she was more of an active heel manager. Like, she would interfere in matches. She would cut, like, very shrill, angry promos meant to get heat, where Becky Bayless is been, up to this point, like, portrayed as just a harmless ditz that isn't I think maybe she's interfered in one match ever by grabbing a leg. Like,
but they also do a ton of slut shaming with her. Like, it's, like, incredible.
Exactly, that's the point. It's like they're so angry at her when she's like done nothing really to hurt anybody.
Yeah,
like she's not an evil heel. She's just portrayed her character at this point as kind of like an airhead, but not like something that would warrant like, oh, that Becky Bayless, she sure does like having sex with lots of men. Isn't that the worst? Like, what? So anyway, after the beatdown, Alex Shelley gets on the mic. He says, tonight, Generation Next is going to make sure this night goes down in infamy. Ari says if people don't step aside, they're going to move them aside. So that's their little promo alluding to something we will catch later. We cut backstage at this point to Dave Prazak with the new and improved Carnage crew of Danny Daniels and Masada. Prazak wants to know why they, quote, befouled the Carnage crew's bags. Daniels says that he hates Loke, and then on the very first Ring of Honor show, there was one open spot on the card for another ref, and it was between him and Loke for that spot, and Loke got it because he kissed more ass, according to Daniels. Masada says he sat at home for the last 6 months trying to get his Ring of Honor spot back, and the Carnage crew only called him to work with them for the Scramble Cage 2 match because they couldn't beat down a bunch of druggy kids by themselves. Masada says he stole that match, and he can hang with anyone. Daniels then says they're not looking for a long, lengthy, ridiculous feud. They're going to end it tonight in a match where the losing team has to split up. I thought this was actually a pretty solid promo in the terms of it filled in like it was weird. Like, we just saw most of this feud has been carried on from promos on the last few shows of the Carnage crew being like, we're going to find who shit on our bags, and then we're going to beat you up because you shit on our bags. And it's like, this is probably stuff they could have would have been good to fill in a few shows ago, where basically in like 2 minutes, they give you a bunch of backstory of this is why we hate the original Carnage crew.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I guess it was pretty good, but it just seemed like so backwards, you know, like in the sense of like, they already did this whole angle, and clearly they had already decided on this night, okay, well, we're dropping this angle. But it's like they didn't even really try, because they had this whole motivation thing, and they didn't even show this to an audience until after the angle was already over, right? Because it's like a backstage segment. I guess there could have been like a promo on this show that was cut, like, you know, like, but I, as far as I could tell, this was the only time they ever actually told the backstory on a DVD. And the match was already done. The angle was already done. That tag team was already split up forever. So I don't know what exactly they were going for with this angle, or what Gabe's vision was of it. But clearly he had completely given up by this point.
I mean, yeah, I was going to ask you, but I think your answer makes it pretty clear. This angle was probably going to go on longer than this until they decided to change their mind, because it just seems very, I mean, I can't imagine this being the plan to end it so abruptly like this from the beginning. Like, we're going to build this up for months and then end it in the very first match. I can't imagine that was the original plan. I have to imagine it was like you're assuming, which is, okay, people are making fun of us for doing an angle based around people shitting in a bag. So how about we're not going to just not give people what we hyped up to deliver, but let's do it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
So that brings us to the Ring of Honor Pure Title Tournament semifinal. So we had on this show a one-night tournament to crown a new Pure Title champion. Ring of Honor had given up any idea of waiting for AJ Styles and at this point and hoping that their relationship with TNA would be salvaged anytime soon. And so we had 2 four-ways, first just single elimination 4-ways, so one fall to a win, and then the winners would face later in the night in a singles match to determine the next Pure Title champ. So this match was Doug Williams defeated Jay Lethal, John Walters, and Nigel McGuinness in 18 minutes, 40 seconds when he pinned Jay Lethal with the Chaos Theory suplex. So this was, as we mentioned earlier, Jay Lethal's very first match in Ring of Honor as Jay Lethal. He had wrestled as Jay Lethal elsewhere, just not in Ring of Honor because he was part of the Special K gimmick.
I believe on one of the TV tapings, he wrestled as Jay Lethal very, very early on, like his first appearance.
That's a good catch.
Yeah, because I remember we talked about it. Like, they showed highlights of it on one of the 2002 DVDs. But that's it. That was the only time. Never on a proper ROH show.
Yeah, so this is his official, I guess, coming out party as Jay Lethal. I like this match. I thought it was like a high above average, like, like a 3-ish star or a little bit more, match. It was entertaining. And I think why you would say, well, that's not a great review, but I would say why I'm impressed with a match at that level is by this point in Ring of Honor, I really had a lot of four-way fatigue. And for a match that went almost 20 minutes, it never bored me. There was never a moment in this match where it bored me. It was never like, it was, again, nothing close to like, oh, you have to go out of your way to seeing this. But it was good. And I felt like these guys all did what they're known to be good at. None of these guys are really spot fest masters. They're not high flyers. You were going to say something?
Oh, no, I wasn't.
Oh, I just thought I heard something. Anyway.
No, my thing was on mute, so it's, yes.
Okay. But all these guys are just known for being good, like solid mid-tempo, like indie wrestlers, and they just do what they're good at. They keep tagging in and out. They do mat work. They do submissions. They do hard strikes. They do the standard thing in the four ways where you build to a final few minutes where it breaks down and tags start being ignored and everyone just comes in. And that moment it got more exciting, but maybe a little more scrambly in like not a scramble way, but like a not good way where guys are kind of waiting for each other an extra couple seconds or out of position because maybe they're not used to doing a match like this. But overall, I this was an enjoyable match. I thought the highlight was Nigel McGuinness and Doug Williams. They teased it at first and then went fairly quickly after teasing it right to them wrestling an extended little mini match against each other. And I thought the fans were really into their, British style escapes. And you're seeing, I think at this point in every match he works, Nigel's starting to do a little more of what we'll come to know as the Nigel signature offense. Like he does the headstand move here to another, big reaction. He does the Tower of London here. He does like the divorce court arm DDT. He's becoming more every show like the Nigel people think of when they think of Nigel in Ring of Honor.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said was good and bad, although I liked the good stuff. I maybe thought the bad parts I liked them less than you did, if that makes sense. Like, I loved all the Williams versus McGuinness stuff. I liked at the beginning, Punk was like, oh, I'm going to do a cravat count to see how many cravats there are in this match. I think he gave up the cravat count after like one or two. He forgot about it. But, I also enjoyed Punk talking about how the British stuff was in style now in the Indies, but everyone else who did it like crap, and Williams and Nigel did it well, which I think is probably true. I think at this point, Williams' stuff looked a little better than Nigel's, right? Because he was already well on his way to being one of the best, and Nigel was still sort of up and coming.
Yeah.
But Punk also keeps calling them limeys, which, is that okay to say? Is that not an offensive slur? I don't know.
I don't think that's a good thing to say. At one point, Gave Even Wonders, he said something like, we're going to have to edit this off the wrestling channel, which for people that don't know, back in this era, there was actually a TV channel in the UK that was called the Wrestling Channel that was just showing wrestling, including Ring of Honor. And so, yeah, Gabe kind of acknowledging like, maybe people across the pond aren't going to like you continuing to call these guys limeys.
Yeah, I think Punk was, like, again, just trying to be Jesse Ventura, Bobby Heenan.
Yes.
Like, just saying heel stuff they would say, but it's 2004 and not, like, 1988, so probably certain stuff didn't fly. Like, I don't think you'd be allowed to say that at WWE TV at that time, and certainly not now. But yeah, all the Nigel and Williams stuff was really cool. Well, I say this every time Doug Williams shows up, but he's such a pleasure to watch, right? Like, just everything he does is just so smooth and so well executed. He's amazing. Lethal and Walters actually got dueling chants, which I was very surprised by. But I guess it makes sense for Lethal because that Elizabeth is actually his hometown. So it makes sense that he'd get some heat or some enthusiasm there. At one point, during the match, Punk is like, all the people in Boston are watching the closed caption. And then I think he catches himself being like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. And he's like, in some sort of Boston facility where they air this closed caption and they're rooting for John Walters. I just like the concept of some sort of Boston facility where they air this closed caption. I think the part the match lost me was that ending part that you were talking about, where they try to do all the fast-paced stuff, but it's like, I don't know. They just didn't. I don't think they did it that well. Like Nigel had Doug in like a head scissors, so Doug does like a headstand. You know how like when you're in a head scissors, you do a headstand and you try to like jump out of it. But while he's doing a headstand, Walters put Lethal's head in between Doug's legs. And so they're also so Nigel has Doug in a head scissors on the ground. Doug has Lethal in a head scissors in the air, and then Walters just tips the whole thing over, which I thought was pretty funny, but also extremely contrived.
It also looked really ugly. It looked like Lethal took like what could have been a really dangerous, awkward bump on like his head and neck.
Yeah, I'm actually also not totally sure that's what Walters meant to do, tipping everyone over. Like I didn't know if he was going to like do another thing and everyone just fell, because I think that's
a great sign when you can't tell if a move is intention. Like
yeah.
The back office is supposed to. When you can't tell that, that's usually not a great sign. But
I guess it worked for what it was going for. But yeah, just like then just all the breakups and stuff, it just felt a little sloppy. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty good. I think Nigel versus Doug made it a good match. I think without that, I wouldn't have liked it nearly as much.
Yeah, I agree. I think the basic gist of this match is most of it was just guys taking turns wrestling each other, like they were having normal little mini matches. And when they tried to do what people expect the end of these multi-man matches to be, these more big spot everyone in things, that's when you saw this wasn't their comfort zone. And that's, like you said, it gets more awkward at that point. Some other things I noticed just quickly. First, on commentary, this is something I think we have loved in the past when they act like Ring of Honor is like a big deal in certain ways that we know it isn't. Like Gabe says, the Vegas odds makers have set odds on who's going to win the pure title tonight. And he says, of the people in this match, Williams is 2-1, Walters is 4-1, Nigel is 7-1, and Jay Lethal is 20-1. And then Punk on commentary is like, I have no idea what any of that means. He just says, and
I just like the idea of like the two nerdiest odds makers in Vegas, like that none of the other odds makers talk to, putting odds on this, and they're trying to like tell people, and everyone's just like, yeah, I'm gonna go bet on the baseball game over there. See you later. Like,
but there were some spots I liked in this match, like Walters took this really wild bump on a Lethal clothesline where he nearly landed on his head or face. And Lethal did one of these things where I think he saw like how good of a bump he did. He's like, I'm going to do that too. And so like right after he takes a big, huge flipping bump on a clothesline on his, I always like stuff like that where like a wrestler's like gets encouraged by another wrestler. Like, okay, I can do it too. There was a moment where, at one point, Lethal is pretty much completely vertical in a John Walters Boston Crab, like to the point where it doesn't even really look painful. Like his head, he's basically just standing on his head at a point until Walters kind of sinks it up better. And apart from that, yeah, I think we covered probably as much talk as this match deserves. But oh yeah, one more thing, and this is one of those things that, Matt, is a sign of the times that I think we've moved beyond that I am really glad at. There was a fan on this night that during every match a British guy was in would chant loudly USA, USA.
Oh yeah, I did write that. Oh man. More than one fan, actually. It was very annoying.
And I would say as recently as like 4 or 5 years ago with Zack Sabre Jr. in PWG, there was still like one fan at PWG shows that would do that whenever Zack Sabre Jr. wrestled. And the difference was by that point, the rest of the crowd would immediately just boo the guy and tell him to shut the fuck up. But I feel like nowadays that fan's been pretty much eliminated, at least from your like prestige, quote unquote, indies.
Well, also keep in mind, LA is very different from the East Coast in terms of their wrestling crowds. Like you still get a bunch of the ruffian types at the East Coast wrestling shows that do obnoxious stuff like that. I don't know how USA would go over in that situation here, but yeah, the PWG crowd, they would not go for that.
Yeah, I just feel like this was a lot more common, where nowadays I would be more surprised if, like, say, Walter came in and worked an Evolve show, if fans in 2020 would chant USA, where back at this point, this was far from uncommon. Like, it didn't happen all the time, but definitely if you were a wrestler working in indie and you were not American or Canadian maybe, there was a fair chance there'd be at least someone in the crowd that was just going to chant USA, no matter if you were supposed to be a face or a heel, like the entire match.
Yep, no, you're right.
And so some progress there. And that brings us to next up, The losing team must break up weapons tag team match. The Carnage crew of DeVito and Loke defeated the new and improved Carnage crew of Danny Daniels and Masada in 10 minutes, 17 seconds when Loke pinned Daniels after he and DeVito hit him with baseball bats, not cats, while he was wearing a garbage can over his head. Matt, I'm going to take first step at this match too because I'm going to just change the order up a bit for a match later I would want to have first pick at. But there's not a ton to say about this match. I would say it was average. It was, I guess, disappointing in the sense that for a match that had this kind of notable, maybe not in the best way, feud attached to it that had been talked about for months, it's one match. It didn't feel that much more hate-filled or violent than any of probably a half dozen Carnage Crew brawl matches we've seen in Ring of Honor up to this point. It just feels it doesn't really feel like the match builds. It just feels like they brawl on the outside. Within the first 2 or 3 minutes, 3 of the 4 guys are bleeding, and Loke is the only one who's not bleeding. He joins them soon afterwards. There's just a lot of kind of plotting, middle of the road brawling. And other than there's a big swinging neck breaker through a table that Loke hits, and there's that finish with the baseball bat attached to a garbage can, there isn't really anything about this match that's really super memorable. It doesn't really build in intensity. It just feels like they're filling 10 minutes of time, and then they end the match. And I guess the one last thing I noticed that was really weird was, it's a weapons match. So you're thinking, well, if you're explicitly calling this match a weapons match, we're going to see like crazy weapons. And the only thing out of the ordinary we see is at one point in the match, the Carnage Crew bails to the outside, the original Carnage Crew, and they grab some more plunder under the ring. Loke sets up the table for the table spot I mentioned. And then one of the things they throw in the ring is this big tray full of what I can only describe as like broken white stuff. I just wrote in my notes, plastic ? I don't know. And it's never really used. It just hangs around. And I don't know what that was or what it was supposed to be or why it didn't get used, but just a very average match, a disappointing end to a not an angle anyone had high hopes for, but it really does feel like this thing went out with just a whimper and them just trying to get it out the door as quickly as possible by this point.
Yeah, we're 3 for 3 on matches that you liked more than me somehow. I thought this was pretty crappy, this match. Not that the guys didn't work hard, but it felt like an afterthought. Booking wise, it felt like an afterthought to the crowd. There wasn't really a lot of heat. Like you said, it was just like a lot of just people hitting each other with stuff. There were some other weapons. They did have the baseball bats. There was a wrench. There was a lot of bleeding and stuff. But yeah, it just felt like they were like booking wise, not the wrestlers. Again, the wrestlers were trying. Daniels was being choked by DeVito while DeVito screamed, "Die, motherfucker, die!" He came out with a crutch like he was limping, and then just hit them with the crutch, and he was faking it and stuff. They did all that stuff, but it was very short. It felt like they were just like, let's get this over with. Booking wise, I mean, I'm not criticizing the wrestlers. I just didn't think this match clicked, and I thought the heat was not good because the feud did not get over. So I just wrote at the end, put this feud out of its misery. I mean, I think that's what they were doing. They were putting it out of its misery, and I felt bad for the guys involved because I think they were kind of cheated by some bad booking here.
But the original, I will say the original Carnage Crew did get a chant after the match. So for whatever
yes, they did.
Worth.
They were still well liked by the crowd, but the match itself was not.
And I have a feeling this might be the match based on a little bit of. We usually don't talk to each other too much about the matches before we record the show, but based on a conversation we had a little while ago, I have a feeling this match will be more simpatico in our views. This is the other Ring of Honor Pure Title Tournament semifinal 4-corner survival match. Thank you, Cage Match, for getting every descriptor there. Alex Shelley defeated Austin Aries, CM Punk, and Matt Striker in 19 minutes, 39 seconds when he pinned Matt Striker with a victory roll. I should note in the finish, Punk had Aries rolled up at the same time, but the win was awarded to Shelley because he was considered to be the legal man. Before I throw it to you, Matt, I guess we should mention before the match, Punk throws his jacket at Shelley. Shelley elbow drops it, and he kicks it out of the ring before he grabs the mic. Shelley gets a loud "shut the fuck up" chant. And at this point, Shelley says Generation Next has already taken Matt Striker's spot. And as far as he's concerned, tonight's match is a 3-way dance, and he can leave. Stryker refuses, and Shelley again for another. I think this was the second straight show. He calls Matt Stryker Captain Charisma, and he says they'll need to get pillows because Stryker's going to put the crowd to sleep. And this actually gets some cheers and applause for some fans. So Matt Stryker's downfall continues, and I felt kind of bad for him at that moment. Shelley then turns his attention to Punk, and he says, "Sooner or later, that we're going to be gunning for you." And then they cheap shot him, and the match starts. Matt, I did think it was kind of weird that they said to Stryker, we already took your spot. And it's like, well, he's booked in a four-way with you, so doesn't that suggest you've taken somebody else's spot that isn't in the match? It seems like his spot has remained. You've taken someone else's spot.
Yeah, but whose? Oh man, so many options. Not Chad Collier. He was not there much to begin with. I would say, if anything, Shelley is sort of taking CM Punk's spot from the year earlier, in the sense that now he's the guy that gets mic time in the ring on every single show. Do you notice that? So they're pushing Alex Shelley extremely hard at this point. That's pretty clear as being the new personality in the company. But as far as the match, first of all, when Punk is coming out, some guy in the crowd is just screaming about how much he hates him during his entrance, and I think it's extremely distracting. It's annoying to a point. But as far as the match itself, they turn it very quickly into a tag team match. Even though Punk's face turn doesn't come for another hour, Punk and Stryker are the faces against Shelley and Aries, who are the heels. But the crowd doesn't really react much during the match to any of them. They just seem kind of bored with this kind of tag match alignment. They, first Punk and Stryker work over Shelley. They work over Shelley's arm, or excuse me, his leg, and they do all this stuff, and the crowd's not really into it. During this time, by the way, Jimmy Bauer mentions the new code of honor, which I actually, unlike the Contenders ring, is actually very simple, so I like it. It's just basically shake hands, keep level playing field, and respect the refs. I think that's actually a much cleaner idea if they're going to have something like that, so I appreciated that.
One thing I thought that was interesting about that was, I'll get to it at the end of the show, but Bruce Mitchell had a review of the show, which I did not think was very great. I think Bruce Mitchell was kind of out of touch with Ring of Honor at this era. But one thing I thought was kind of funny was Gabe, when he did this new rules of code of honor, he emphasized these are just, you don't have to follow these, but the locker room will think you're a jerk if you don't do them. And so in his review, Bruce Mitchell said, "I love the suggestions of honor," he said. And I thought that was a funny way. It's no longer the rules. It's just these are some suggestions to be honorable.
Yeah, but also, shouldn't every heel not care if the locker room thinks they're a jerk? Isn't that what being a heel is? I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah. So finally, Generation Next gets the advantage, and they get the heat on Punk. After Aries kind of Punk is getting Irish whipped, and Aries takes out a shirt and sort of chokes him on it and knocks him down. And then they take over. They work on Punk's neck, setting up for the Border City stretch and stuff like that. And also they apparently they're going to take out all of Punk's limbs, because then Aries works on his arms and legs. I think this whole idea of the Generation Next being a team and taking everyone out, it makes sense on some level, but Punk is still a heel. And enough people in the Jersey crowd don't like him, so they're not really getting behind him in the match. So when Stryker gets hot tagged in, that's not obviously that hot either, because it's Stryker. So, but then I guess one nice twist is after Stryker gets hot tagged in, Punk and Stryker fight too. It's not just Stryker taking out Generation Next. Him and Punk still go at it too. So I like that. And then so Aries and Stryker. Aries and Shelley both get their submissions on Punk. Stryker breaks that up. And eventually you get to Aries breaking up the Stryker lock with the 450. Then Aries gets hit with a Shining Wizard, and then they do the simultaneous victory rolls. Aries and Shelley does. So Aries does one on Punk, but Punk blocks it, while Shelley does one effectively on Stryker, and they count Shelley's pin instead of Punk's, and that's where the controversy comes. But so Shelley gets into the pure title match. So it's kind of a cheap face-saving finish for Punk, and I don't think the match really worked either. I thought this was a really boring match.
Yeah, I thought this match was – I was trying to be kind to it, average at best, but your review is kind of reinforcing in my mind. It might even be worse than that, and I just feel like it's a super disappointing match because on paper, if you tell me Alex Shelley, Austin Aries, CM Punk, and even Matt Striker is not a bad wrestler, are going to get 20 minutes, like that, this is where it tops out at. That like maybe it tops out at like 2.5 stars. I would say that's very disappointing, and that's exactly, in my opinion, what this match is. And it's like you said, it's because one of the reasons, but not the only reason, but one of the main reasons is because they did something that four-ways occasionally do, which is the guys decide, you know what, we don't want to do a four-way, we're going to do a tag match. And except the problem is, as you pointed out, 3 of the 4 guys in this match are heels. And even though Jen Next and CM Punk both get mixed reactions on this night, like you said, they both still get heel reactions from a noticeable part of the crowd. Like when Shelley did his mic work before the match, he got boos and shut the fuck up chants. And when Punk wrestles at some point during this match, he gets like CM pussy chants, I think. So you get this weird thing where it's they treat it like it's a babyface versus heel tag team, but 3 of the people in the match are halfway heels at least in terms of crowd reaction, and the one guy that's a babyface is the guy the crowd actually likes the least, probably, in Matt Striker. They were laughing at him when Shelley was talking about him putting the crowd to sleep before the match. So that's not good. I also felt like Generation Next, I've said this before, I think one of the hardest things in tag team wrestling is doing an extended beatdown of somebody and making it compelling the whole way through. I think a lot of teams struggle with that for some reason. I feel like there was just a lot of work here where teams were in control and it just wasn't very engaging. And I felt like when they finally did the same thing that all these four-ways do, which is breaks down the final few minutes, it ramps up, and everyone's doing moves and lots of different near falls, it just it didn't redeem the rest of the match. It wasn't good enough to really go well. It picked up in the last few minutes. And then a couple other things that bugged me while I'm piling on this match. The finish kind of bugged me because, like you said, it was this weird face-saving finish for Punk. But yet, I think why it bugged me was the ref was like, no, it's only Shelley counts because he was the legal man. And it's like, how many of these four-ways have we seen where every time it breaks down and the ref loses all control, he doesn't know who the legal men are, and he counts every pin attempt regardless of the person. And this is the one match he just so happens to know exactly who the legal man is and like instantly know, nope, this is the valid end of the match. And it was just, I don't know why Punk needed that. Dave wrote in The Observer, this allows Punk to stay alive as one of the first contenders for the pure title. And I don't think Punk ever, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Punk really ever got involved for the pure title.
Also, did he really need to have that to stay alive for that position?
Yeah.
Like, he couldn't have had a pure title match without that? Like, really? And like, that's, like, it was completely unnecessary. Like, it added nothing.
And another problem I had with the match was they did another thing that I really hate in these kind of multi-man matches where it's everyone from themselves and there can only be one winner, which is Punk and Striker do some little bit of teaming up during the match, but a couple times, like you said, one attacks the other. And on commentary, or even at one point, like the fans, they like boo when Striker attacks Punk or Punk attacks Striker. And it's like, well, only one of these guys can win. Like, what do you want them to be, partners for the entire match when there's like a real prize at stake here? There's a title shot at stake and only one person can win. And, like, there's a point where Striker gets a hot tag and he beats down Gen X and then he goes and attacks Punk, who just tagged him in, and the crowd boos him. And it's like, well, what he's doing is a smart thing. You know, he shouldn't be a partner with Punk for the whole match. And then later on, I think to do a spot where I forget if it's Punk accidentally chops Striker or Striker accidentally chops Punk when they were trying to hold a Generation Next member to get chopped. And then they just stare at each other for a few seconds like it's the biggest betrayal. And again, it's like, it's every man for themselves. Like, why are you acting like this is, the long-standing Matt Striker CM Punk relationship has been fractured? It was just it's one of those little things that just bugs me a lot for some reason. You know what this match could have used? CM Punk on commentary making fun of it. Exactly. And of course, as with all these Punk shows that he does commentary for, it's Gabe solo just for the Punk match, even though it's all post-production to try and give it a bit of realism, that as if Punk was actually doing the commentary live. So you have Gabe all alone on this match doing commentary. I actually thought, like, Matt Striker actually didn't look terrible in this match, I'll say. I thought he did my favorite spot of the whole match where he has Aries and he throws him down into a stomach breaker and then he just doesn't let him fall and he just lifts him right back up, like kind of tosses him back onto his shoulders and then hits the Death Valley driver, which I thought looked cool. And
yeah, I keep forgetting Matt Striker was in the mix for still so long, including up until now. I mean, he just never wins anymore, but they still kept him around, still kept him in notable matches.
I felt bad though, because at this point the crowd really was not a big fan of Matt Striker. And there was a point where it's just like, when it's not your day, it's really not your day. Because there was a moment where Striker and Punk give Shelley a double back elbow, and then Shelley's lying on the mat, and at this point Striker just is not aware of where Shelley is, and he trips over Shelley's arm, and the crowd like starts jeering him. A few people do, and they laugh at him, and I'm just like, your run has really gone off a cliff, you poor guy. If you want the Vegas odds for this match, Matt, Gabe said Punk was a 2-1 fave, and everyone else in the match was 4-1. So not as interesting as the last match, but yeah, just probably one of the more disappointing matches we've seen so far this year in terms of just who's on paper and the time it's given versus what you end up getting.
Yeah, didn't work. What can you do?
So after the match, Punk gets on the mic and he gets a mix of shut the fuck up chants but also, positive Punk chants. Punk says what he's about to say isn't for Aries, it's for Baby Bear, which is referring to a little gimmick Alex Shelley had in TNA at this time to give you an idea of the time period we're in.
Because his valet was Goldilocks.
Yeah, and he was the Baby Bear, and he gets a Baby Bear chant here.
Exactly.
Punk says Shelley didn't beat Punk. He beat Matt Striker, so he didn't get one over on the Second City Saints. Again, poor Matt Striker. Punk says a Generation Next wants spots. He'll give them one. He'll give them Raven spot, who he kicked out of Ring of Honor. Punk then says, I'll give you Christopher Daniels spot. Punk says Shelley is still a loser, and he's still better than him, and that gets another big mix of cheers and boos. Punk then says if anyone else wants a spot, come back at the end of the night and he'll give them Steamboat spot because he's taking Steamboat out tonight. So still clearly a heel, even though that'll change later on the show. Very strong heel at this point, while also kind of cutting a promo against another heel group, but it'll all make sense by the end of the night. And that brings us next to a Falls Count Anywhere tag team match. This is the match I want first dibs at because I don't know how you're going to feel about it, Matt. This is probably a match where I will like it in a weird way more than you. BJ Whitmer and Dan Moff defeated the Second City Saints of Ace Steel and Colt Cabana in 10:54 when Whitmer pinned Steel after he and Moff hit a concerto on him. So, in a way, the first part of this match is kind of similar to the Carnage Crew Weapons match, where it's a lot of kind of mid-level plotting, brawling, and it's not really doing anything special. But I will say, I don't know, I would give this match, like, in terms of entertainment, like, a bit above average, but it isn't really for what, like, its quality as a quote-unquote wrestling match is because it just gave me a few goofy, memorable moments. Maybe not always ones they intended to produce, but I'll just go through them. There's one first where it's a Falls Count Anywhere match, so they brawl into the crowd, and Moff and Colt are brawling on these bleachers, but the bleachers are only like 3 tiers high. It's not very high at all. And at one point, Moff is like selling like he's going to fall off the third, like it's going to be him falling off the Empire State Building, when it's probably a drop of like, I don't know, 6 feet, 7 feet.
Yeah, like you could probably land on your feet after that drop.
Yeah, and then later, like moments later, Colt jumps off the very first step, which is basically akin to jumping off a curb to do a double axe handle. And they like sell it like it's like not a comedy spot. Like, oh my God, he just jumped off of, that's got to be 1 foot off the ground, Matt. And he does it, which again, at this point I was like, okay, this match is starting to win me over. Then they brawl, all 4 guys, up the stairs, up to this balcony or bleacher, just this high up section where the hard cam is. And the poor sound guy or tech guy is like crouching down and still trying to stay at the soundboard and like monitor things as everyone, I don't know if he eventually leaves, but at first he's like, just like, I'll just squeeze by here and you guys can brawl around me. I'm going to keep monitoring the levels here. And that was funny. But then it gets better because you see them brawl on this balcony section. Moff at one point is actually on the outside holding onto the bars teasing that he could fall off. And this would be what appears to be quite a big drop. So it's a bit of an ooh-ah moment. But then he soon gets Colt on the other side of the bars, and Colt falls off this risen high up area, and he falls off the side that the crowd is not on, so we don't see what he falls onto. Presumably he fell on something very safe, but Gabe is screaming and saying that Colt could be dead. He fell 20 feet and all this stuff. And what I love is a couple things, Matt. First off, Punk, who is Colt's good friend and Second City stablemate, acts like this isn't even a big deal. Like, he does not want to oversell it like Gabe does. And like within a few seconds, they're just back to calling the match. Like Gabe acts in one moment like Colt may have just died, and then it's like, here comes a move on Ace Steel, and Punk isn't. And then there's this other moment where when Colt falls, because the Rexplex was this big multi-purpose sports center where there was lots of different things happening in the building at once. Often, on other Rexplex shows, you could hear the noises from other sporting events in the building as it was happening. And so in this one, you can see way off, like in the distance, just the black silhouette of a bored person leaning on another balcony who would have a great view of Colt Cabana falling to his death. And he's just staring at it. And he's like just leaning against the balcony, looking so bored, the silhouette, and he does not move at all. And for some reason, this made me laugh so hard. The idea of Gabe is screaming that Colt has just possibly died. And you just see some bored person who's like, yeah, this dumb wrestling show. Some guy just fell on like a stack of crates or something. And for some reason, if a match can't be good, at least be memorable, and that's what it did for me. And then we get the very end with another big oversell where Moff hits Steel with a spotlight, and Gabe sells it as both being super hot and a $20,000 piece of equipment that was just destroyed, which I think would probably bankrupted Ring of Honor at this point. And so yeah, overall, this was just kind of a standard indie Falls Count Anywhere match, complete with times where it was hard to see and not well lit. But there was enough goofy, memorable spots where I will remember this match. And if nothing else, that's a plus to me.
Yeah, I'm with you. No, I honestly am. I thought this match was a lot of fun. Definitely the most entertaining match so far. Overall, the opener had some good stuff too, but I think this was just a lot of fun. It was, it's silliness in the crowd. It's still way too much in the way of unprotected chair shots to a lot of the guys, especially to Ace Steel, because he always gets lots of unprotected chair shots to his head and delivers a lot of them. But yeah, the stuff on the bleachers was really funny. How about this line from Punk that I almost don't even want to say because it's so sexist, where Gabe is like, you just have to pin someone against a flat surface. So Punk goes, so anyone can be pinned up against the chest of Alice in Danger? Which I just wrote, yeesh, like, oh God. But yeah, the balcony stuff was, Cabana just falling into the abyss. It was an interesting ending, but also I loved the teases that Moff did before that, where he was on the other side of the ledge and they were teasing him falling onto the crowd side, because they would do all this stuff to him, hit him over the head with boards and stuff, and somehow he would keep hanging on. I thought that was almost comical also. And then yeah, ending it with a concerto I thought was a pretty good finish. I don't know. I thought it was it was a much more decisive ending than I expected, which I liked just in terms of setting up the following week's big match between Punk and Steel and Whitmer and Moff. The only
that they're gonna.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
Go on. No. Well, I was just going to say, yeah, knowing that they're going to lose the feud in a week, this, I guess, was their one last big win here. And, of course, because Punk's not involved, it's easier to give them a really, like you said, definitive, strong win here, where Colt Cabana might be dead and Ace Steel gets his brains bashed in.
Yeah, the one critique I'll have is actually of Punk. Because he comes back onto commentary after his loss, and he's really mad about getting screwed in that finish. And he's he just buries the match that has his own team in it, because he's like, this match, my match next week with Moff and Whitmer, this is at the beginning of this match. He's like, my match next week is going to be the most violent match ever. Someone's going to die in that match. You watch that match. I'm like, this match has just started, so maybe talk about this match. And obviously Punk feels like he can get away with saying that because he probably recorded this commentary after that match happened. So he knows for a fact that was in fact the most violent match in ROH history almost, or one of them. But still, I didn't like that he basically buried this match as it was starting.
Yeah, that's a problem Punk had on commentary, I've noticed at this time, which was sometimes when he did the thing during these shows where he would not step out for his match and then come back and pretend, that he had just wrestled the match, he would act very in character. And a lot of times the match after Punk's match on these shows that he commentates, it's like half the commentary is just him basically cutting a promo in regards to his match and just reacting in whatever the emotion would be from that match, which, yeah, like in a case like this match, completely detracts from it and kind of steals the focus. And in a way, it makes sense for the CM Punk character, but it doesn't make sense for the show, which is maybe a good reason not to ever have a wrestler do commentary on a show they're working on.
At least when they're that as prominent as Punk is and has angles and stuff to talk about.
Yeah, because you put them in a weird position because the wrestler does have to kind of – they can't just say, well, I lost that match, but no big deal. But at the same time, their job as a commentator is to focus on the next match and put it over. So it's kind of those two goals kind of don't always work well together. But after the match, Allison Danger gets in the ring, and of course, Moff and Whitmer are still up in this risen balcony section. But she gets in the ring and gets on the mic, and she congratulates Moff and Whitmer for getting a win for the Prophecy. And from the balcony, we can see Moff and Whitmer clearly act like she's insane. Like, doesn't this girl know? We've already told her the Prophecy's over. So at this point, Danger gets really angry, and she points out that she owns the rights to Moff and Whitmer's contracts, which means she owns them, and she can book their matches for them. And then she says the Prophecy will never die. So we're setting up the next little angle where the Prophecy are basically going to be a feud with Allison Danger, where Danger is going to book them in matches with the express purpose of hoping they get the shit beat out of them.
She also says she's going to bring in a tag team, which I don't think actually happens, right? So she just basically has the Carnage crew do her bidding.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think so. So next, we go backstage with Gary Michael Capetta for Intermission. He's with Special K, and this is when we really get to see Dixie's chest, and his head, too, is really marked up super red. Becky is lying on the floor. She's begging for someone to help her up. She's hurt from the backbreaker. Dixie says he's tired of losing, and Special K start bickering at this point. Becky keeps asking for help as Special K ignores her and leaves. And I just wrote at the end, Gary won't even help her up. Like, come on, man. Just help a person up. But it's kind of funny where basically they're just doing the exact same angle they just did with Jay Lethal, but with Dixie and Izzy now. The Special K members decide they don't want to party anymore.
Well, also they don't actually have the performances in the ring against top stars to match the way Lethal does.
Yeah, they're not getting the showcases here. But next we go.
Also, Gary Michael Capetta calls Becky darling as she lays on the floor. So insult to injury.
The embassy of Prince Nana and the Outcast Killers then make their way to the ring after intermission, and Nana takes the mic. He calls the crowd hicks and he tells them to shut up. Nana says he's traveled around the world and found one of the top tag teams in Ring of Honor with the Outcast Killers. I would just note he didn't have to travel very far to find them if that was his goal. He says he's cleaned out his bank accounts to bring in his new member, and out comes someone in a gold and purple robe with a towel over their head. Big mystery. Nana then, as the guy goes in the ring, Nana pulls off the towel and reveals him to be Jimmy Rave. It gets some cheers and some claps. Rave takes off the robe to reveal what I liked is he's wearing this very embassy-looking, royal-looking purple and gold robe, and then he takes it off to reveal he's just wearing the same old pre-embassy, pleather-looking, indie-ass-looking Jimmy Rave gear he's always had, which does not look very royal. At this point, Trent Acid's music hits, and we get Jimmy Rave defeating Trent Acid via pinfall in 10 minutes, 5 seconds after he hits the Styles Clash. Matt, what did you think about this? Is kind of a big moment in terms of Jimmy Rave would be a fixture on the mid-card and upper mid-card for Ring of Honor for quite a while after this, and this is the official repackaging of him right here.
Yeah, I don't think anyone probably could have guessed that he would have been as successful in this role as he ended up being. I've obviously, Gabe had big plans for him as he was already doing the Styles Clash as his finish and all that stuff. But, it turns so this actually was a really big moment in early ROH, unbeknownst to us. But actually, it came off really well even at the time, I thought. The crowd reacted pretty well to it. They didn't totally shit on it. They booed him, but in like the right way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like they were like, fuck this, and shit on the match. They were into the match.
He's already getting a Die Jimmy Die chant in his very first match as a heel.
Yeah, which is what you want, right?
Yeah.
I'd say the match itself wasn't that great because I don't think Acid was that great. Like, he started off doing a bunch of flippy stuff and, like, none of it was connecting.
Yeah.
Rave came back with the hard clothesline and a high knee. And it was funny to hear on commentary Punk defending Rave, just because, like, they would have a pretty big feud months later. But, like, one part of the storyline of this match that I noticed is the Embassy kept interfering on Rave's behalf, but it kept not really amounting to much. Like, Acid would just get control right after that. Like he would allow Rave to catch him on the top rope, but Acid would still slam him off the top rope, like stuff like that. Eventually, Rave hit a couple of big moves in a row. He hit the running knee, and he teased doing it again, but instead hit the Styles Clash for the win. But I like that they still had Rave sort of like not be totally effective, and like it took a lot of interference from the Embassy to actually put him over, and he would just get better and better as time went on. So I like that touch kind of. And I thought it was a good storyline. I thought it was a good presentation, and I thought it worked.
Yeah, I think the angle worked great. And for those who haven't been following the shows or following the podcast or listening to this out of order for some reason, the background with this is Jimmy Rave had lost most of his Ring of Honor matches in his run before this as a babyface. And they had even built up in his last couple of matches, Gabe saying, like, if he doesn't win this match, he's probably done in the company. And he kept losing. And as we've mentioned on a previous show, Jimmy Rave actually like wrote a live journal saying like he was pissed off at Gabe for firing him and they didn't give him a chance. And both the Observer and the Torch, I believe, bought the story. Rave to this day has talked about how he was really proud that he kind of hooked them into believing it. And they really thought this was firing, but according to Rave, this was all planned right from the start. This wasn't them like turning an angle from something reality. No, it was always, Rave gets fired and he gets brought back almost immediately. And of course, there's this comedy part of it of the Embassy's big crown jewel hyped guy that Prince Nana empties his bank account for is the guy who just got fired for losing too much. And one other little piece of background I found out doing research for the show, Matt, is Jimmy Rave actually did a 2-part interview, a very long, extensive one with an honorable mention. And in episode 27, he really talks just about his Ring of Honor days. And he noted that he's never really had a great relationship in the ring with Trent Acid. He said he noted that he was booked to go over Trent Acid in CZW at one point, and Trent Acid apparently really didn't want to lose to Jimmy Rave. And so Rave says, going into this match, Trent Acid's just like, here we go again, he says to Rave. And Rave just felt like, well, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm sorry they've booked me to beat you, but I don't wonder if that somehow impacted how this match was worked, because I felt like a lot of this match, maybe it was like you were saying, just to show that Rave is still a heel that needs a lot of help. But for for his big first match in this new gimmick, I felt like he gave Trent Acid a lot of the match. Like up to a point, it felt more like a Trent Acid showcase than a Jimmy Rave showcase.
Maybe that is why. I still thought it worked for the gimmick.
Yeah, and for those who didn't watch the match either, this is kind of a different match because not only is there a ton of interference in front of the ref that doesn't do anything about, but I would say a few minutes into the match, Prince Nana grabs the house mic and is like cheering Jimmy on over the PA system for the entire rest of the match. So,
yeah, but the commentary talks over it, so you don't really get to hear a ton of what he's saying.
Yeah. I agree with you. I didn't think Trent looked great. He was doing like just a lot of flashy offense, but he didn't really have great. The moves he was doing were cool, but he doesn't have really great execution in this.
Yeah, they didn't connect. So how cool could they be?
Yeah, Yeah, they could have been cool, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
And the one thing I noticed is, I believe Punk was a pretty big fan of Jimmy Rave and fought for him at this time, and Jimmy Rave really puts him over in this interview, like about some of the suggestions he gave to Rave. And you can even, there's one moment in this match, I think the coolest spot in this match might be Rave just does he like Acid's in the corner and he like runs into the corner and just like does a step up and then knees him in the head. And it's a move he's done before, but it just really looked and sounded good this time. And you can hear Punk like get legitimately impressed, like, whoa, like where it kind of breaks from the announcer voice where he's like, whoa, I didn't expect I'd see that. And I have a feeling that, you know, Punk probably just had a soft spot in his heart for Jimmy Rave, and probably you hear it in moments like that it's probably in his back of his head, like, I'd like to work with this guy in the future here.
Yeah, he was right, because that whole thing worked out very well.
Yeah. And again, we get the Styles Clash to set up the possible AJ Styles feud in the future. The other thing I noticed, this is probably the most women I've ever seen do the put money in Trent Acid's pouch. Like, for all those people that do the cliche of women don't come to these hip indie shows, you're usually honest, but usually right. But I was surprised by the number of women that put money into his underwear or tights this time.
Okay, but but is it possible that's just because normally on those ROH DVDs they cut out part of the entrance, and this time, because it's a double, they showed the entire thing?
It's possible. And also I wanted to say, I feel bad for, I was going to say, that Mary Kate, the ringside photographer, because after he does all this, you can see Trent reach into his tights and keep pulling out money and just throwing it on the mat for Mary Kate to have to like gather up. And I felt like, that's not her job, man. Like,
what if she gets to keep it, though?
Well, even at that point, like, how much money would you – this is a good question for the home listener. How much crotch money would you need to get to be able to touch crotch money? Like, is $20 enough to get money that – like I'm not touching a dime that was snuggled up against the guy's nether regions. Like, a dime isn't enough. I don't know where the line is, but I don't want your sweaty crotch money unless it's – $25 at least. Okay,
so you have a $25 crotch money minimum.
Yes.
Does the whoever's crotch it is make a difference though?
No, I think I'm pretty.
Like, what if it was touching the Big Valboski? That's blessed crotch money right there.
I'd probably be too busy having like a very aggravating political conversation with him, judging by recent news. But
okay, but Batista's, he has good politics.
Well, then I would put that on eBay. I'd be like, this 20 was against Batista's legendary hog, and I would probably turn that 20 into like a 200.
Yeah, so, but you still would have to touch it.
That would be worth it. And I'd also have to get him to sign like a certificate of authenticity to really get that eBay money going good.
Would he sign it? Would he sign it with it? Never mind.
The only other thing to mention is I love again how Punk kind of undercuts Gabe's really, Gabe is selling that Colt thing, that Colt could be dead, and Punk goes like, I have an update on Cabana. He's shaken up, but he's okay. He fell on some skateboarders that were trying to watch the show for free. I just love the difference between Gabe, who's like, oh my God, Colt could be dead, and Punk being like, yeah, he fell on some skateboarders. He's okay.
I also just love that Punk, whenever he says something funny, like one time during the show, he was like, aren't I more fun than Mark Nolte? And it's like, yeah, Mark Nolte's jokes are less funny than CM Punk's, I will admit.
Yeah, again, that might just be him trying to do – he's very much aping, like you said earlier, Jesse Ventura. You can really hear a super big Jesse Ventura influence on Punk and commentary in this era.
And definitely some Heenan also. I mean, yeah. Like all of us, if we were all going to be – like if everybody our age was going to be a color commentator, we would all try to be Jesse Ventura and Bobby Heenan, right?
I think the difference is like – Heenan was more of the buffoon who would let the play-by-play guy kind of get one over on him, so to speak. Like, he would let himself be the butt of the joke a lot.
Yes.
Where Punk's not a big fan, I think, of letting him like be proven wrong or the butt of the joke.
That's true.
That's the one thing where the relationship Jesse had with Gorilla would be more like Jesse would point out things that even as a kid I'd be like, maybe you shouldn't be pointing that out because that actually is true. Like why can the babyface Gorilla get away with this when the heel can't?
Yeah.
And Gorilla would, and Punk kind of does that sometimes. I notice where
yes,
he'll be like, But anyway,
where Punk injects logic, where logic actually undermines the story they're trying to tell. Yes.
yeah, where Heenan was always about like, I'm gonna say things that are so ridiculous, I'm wrong. Like the gorilla's gonna get one over on me every time because I'm just gonna play the buffoon like way to the hilt.
Yeah. The Heenan influence is more in like the jokes that Punk tells.
Yeah, the idea that you can be real funny, and crack wise. Yeah. And that brings us to the semi-main event from a match standpoint, although I guess the semi-main event technically in a weird way is a non-wrestling segment. But that brings us to the Ring of Honor Pure Title Tournament Final match to crown the new champion. Doug Williams defeated Alex Shelley via submission in 1921 when he used what I would describe, I guess, as like a rope-assisted hammerlock with a choke thrown in there. Matt, I think this is no contest, easily the best match on the show. I would not put this as like on the level of a great, you've got to go out of your way to see this match. I would say it's just the one step below. I'd say it's like, a 3 3/4 star if I had to give it or something like that, or maybe bordering on 4 stars, but like very good. Yeah, really enjoyable match. They do the pure rules for this. In the 2 4-ways, they didn't do the pure rules. And I can understand that because like counting rope breaks among 4 people would be a nightmare. But it is kind of funny to note that we've now had this year 2 pure title tournaments. And between those tournaments, we've had a combined 2 matches with the pure rules because only the finals in each tournament actually had the rules.
Right. The other matches that had the rules were like random matches before that to like show people what the rules were.
Yeah, so again, it'd be one of those weird things. Like, imagine the King of the Death match tournament being like every match with the finals was a straight up technical wrestling match. I mean, that's kind of what these tournaments have ended up being.
Gabe was so committed to this rope breaks thing. He was like, "No, we're going to get the rope break thing. We're going to make it happen." Like he kept like after it failed the first time, like he was just like, "No, we need the rope break thing." Like I kind of admire it. Like he just really wanted a title with those rope break rules.
And it's crazy that they're bringing back the pure title, apparently. Like,
yeah, I mean, you know what? Why the fuck not?
It's weird. Like, people have nostalgia from the era of Ring of Honor that comes from, but does anyone actually have nostalgia for the pure title? Like, is anyone out there pumping their fist and going, "Finally, the rope breaks are back, baby"? Like, I don't
possibly Gabe Sapolsky. Maybe Gabe, what do you say?
I mean, Gabe got it. I didn't even think Gabe. I mean, Gabe got rid of his own belt, but
yeah, but it's been 14 years.
So I would say this is a tale of 2 matches. I would say both halves are good, but I think the second half is where it gets really good. The first half of this match is what I would almost describe as basically a technical wrestling spot fest, where Shelley comes into this match. We should note. Selling his arm being hurt from his prior match on the night. And both guys just trade really cool, innovative, submissions back and forth for like the first half of this match. And they don't really tell a story in the first 10 minutes. And even though Shelley's selling his arm, Williams goes to it a little bit, but he doesn't really doggedly stay on it. And it just feels, like I said, like kind of like a submission spot fest where it's just about, we're not going to struggle in these submissions for a long time. They don't even do a rope break for this segment of the match. And it's just more about, you do something cool on the mat, I'll do something cool on the mat. And it's entertaining, but at that point I felt like a little something was missing. And I also felt like I had forgotten, like halfway into this match, that it was a pure title match because they had done no countout teases, nose closed fist punch things, which are not allowed, and no rope breaks. So at that point, the first half of this match could have just been a regular wrestling match. But then the second half, Doug Williams grabs Shelley and he throws him really hard by the arm, like into the turnbuckle. And I believe one of the commentators even says something like, the feeling out process is over. And from that point, it becomes way more of a standard indie match with a few submissions sprinkled in, as opposed to the first half, which was like nothing but on the mat and submissions. And both guys pick a body part. They really focus on it. So at this point, Williams is now really focused on Shelley's arm. Shelley works over the neck. He does some really cool moves on the neck. And it just builds and builds. And it's just a really good match. I really liked Shelley's selling of his arm, where sometimes when a guy is selling a limb, it's like they'll do a move and then like 10 seconds later they'll be like, oh yeah, I should sell my arm or leg and go, ow. But like I like Shelley, every time he did a move to Williams' neck, he sold his arm immediately, like right afterwards, like, ow shit, it hurt to do that. And after one move he did, he actually like let out a yelp right afterwards, like, ow fuck, I hurt my arm really bad doing this move to hurt your neck. And I just thought, just you really see just the standard quality of both these guys. Like we're big fans of Doug Williams. I thought Doug Williams looked really good here, and I think you forget sometimes how a good he is at showing aggression. Sometimes you just think of him as, oh, he's the British guy, technical wrestling guy, but you forget he's a big beefy guy that really can come off as a scary guy too. And I also loved even just stuff like Doug Williams does his big bomb scare flying knee drop and a jumping knee. And both times, normally that would just hit like the body, but he makes sure to hit the arm on both those moves. And I love stuff like that where people change their signature moves to focus on a body part. Like it just shows their heads really in the match. And yeah, just a really good match. I guess my one complaint though would be I didn't feel like the pure rules really added anything to it. It didn't really take away from the match, but Shelley uses all three rope breaks. Doug Williams doesn't use one. Like I said before, no one uses a rope break till the middle of this long match. There's no count out teases. At one point, Shelley bails to the outside and the ref counts for like a few seconds and he just walks back in. That's the only count out tease. And I think Shelley uses one closed fist punch and the ref warns him, and that's it. And it's one of those things where I don't think the pure title rules usually take away from matches, but I think the problem is there's rarely a match other than maybe some of the Nigel McGuinness matches of his heel run where I feel like they make the match better. Like I never, like I don't watch this match and go, wow, this match was better than it would have been thanks to those pure title rules. But still, for me, this is the match of the night. Like, did you agree that this is the match of the night?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit more forgiving of the pure title stuff than you are. I have a soft spot because, like, the era when I was going to ROH the most, they still had the pure title. There were some interesting matches. I don't think it necessarily makes the matches better, but it does make the matches different. Like, I think one thing it did in this match is it made clear that Doug was winning the match. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. He got Shelley to use his rope breaks. Shelley didn't. So it's like that creates that dynamic where Doug was like in the lead and held the lead, you know, which is not something that you can normally get in a regular pro wrestling match. You know, it's sort of like whoever does most offense, I guess. But the offense was back and forth, but Doug was like ahead on points. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, like in normal matches, especially these days, the momentum can switch from move to move. But if you're down on rope breaks, like 3-0, yeah, there's a score to it that there isn't in most wrestling, other than maybe like an Iron Man match or a 2 out of 3 falls match.
Exactly. One thing I love about ROH during this era is the fact that you could have a guy like Doug Williams who's not there most of the time, but he'll come in, be put in a major match, and be completely accepted. You know, a lot of promotions you don't really get that. Certainly not in WWE, where a guy just comes in, he's in a title match, and people take it totally seriously that he could win. So that's one thing I like. They just appreciate him because they know he's good. And I'll always love that about ROH. The early part, like you said, it was good, but I thought, you know, all of Doug's escapes and stuff were good, but it probably did go on a little too long. At one point, Williams, like, ties Shelley up in, like, a ball. And that's there's going to be another match where a guy does a thing where he's going to be like rolled up like a ball, and like it's just interesting because also after he rolled Shelley up like a ball, he didn't do anything. Like he just put him in there and then just like kept him there and like walked around and like pointed at him, and it was like I don't know if this is effective wrestling.
It was simply to emasculate him and not to actually gain an advantage.
Yeah. I thought that was kind of strange, but like, yeah, once it got going and they did the rope breaks, I thought that was really cool. You know, I liked the different ways that they did it because, you know, Williams was working on the arm and so he, Doug, you know, because it was already hurt in the previous match and that immediately forced Shelley to go for a rope break. Then he got like almost like a Fujiwara style arm bar, and Shelley used his next rope break. And let's see, where did he do this? Oh yes, where Doug he hit the bomb scare and does like it was like a bridging like hammerlock almost, and Shelley like he broke it, but then with an eye rake, but then he gets it on again. He uses the final rope break, and then he does like a lifting hammerlock, followed by a Fujiwara armbar, and you thought like, of course that's it, but he actually escapes into the Border City stretch. I like that whole sequence. Also, Punk being mean on commentary He says, I wonder how far along Todd Sinclair is. Is he the first pregnant man in the history of the world? Yeah, so, but yeah, I thought the match, yeah, like you said, it was very good. It didn't quite, to me, get to great level, just because it didn't have quite as much drama down the stretch, but it was very well worked, very good. The one question I actually have is, do you think they should have just put the belt on Shelley here? Like, was there anything gained by having Doug Williams have this few-month title reign?
Especially knowing with the benefit of hindsight, knowing that it's not like Doug has a very long storied run with the title. Like, Shelley could have really, I think, used it at this point. Like, Generation X could have used having one of the titles. You know, there's 3 titles now. They could have used one, especially since they're going into a feud with Punk. Like, it makes perfect sense where they just started a feud with Punk earlier on the show. Well, you can have Shelley say, I've got a title, and soon you won't have a title because they're going to lose to the Rottweilers, the tag belts. But, yeah, I don't get why I'd be interested. The only thing I can think of why they picked Doug is maybe they felt like after AJ left, right after getting the Pure title, they needed someone that had a bit more star power maybe, and, Doug is kind of always the big random attraction.
Yeah, credibility.
Yeah.
I could see that, but I do think that Shelley was probably would have been the better choice at the time.
Especially because Doug, they were not able to book him because he's a UK guy. It isn't like it is nowadays where some indies fly, imports in on every show. Ring of Honor was not able to fly Doug Williams in for every single show. So
no, in fact, I think Doug would not be at very many more shows at all. In 2004.
Yeah. I just going over. There's a few other things I just want to mention because there's a lot of little things in this match that I think made it good that I liked. I just thought their work was, there's all these little moments. There was one thing I liked, which was I think Alex Shelley, even though he was trying to play the kind of cool, like heel, modern, cutting edge, stable leader heel here, I think Shelley always kind of missed his calling as a really good kind of comedy buffoon heel because he's really good at like selling really over the top, like getting his comeuppance moments. Like there's a moment in this match where Williams does this move. It's hard to describe, but if you've watched him, you've seen him do this, where someone has like Williams in a hold and Williams brings his like foot up and catches the guy's arms that are applying the hold and just kind of uses his weight to bring the guy into a headlock. And so it takes a few seconds. And so Williams is doing this match. And as he's slowly pulling Shelley into this headlock, you can hear Alex Shelley yell in like this defeated sound. He goes, "Hey, stop doing that!" Like as he's getting put into the headlock, like he's powerless to just let go and stop it. And it's that kind of stuff where he actually has like a bit of a hidden ham in him, where he's really good at goofy stuff like that. There's a super kick Alex Shelley hits in this match that just looks great. I don't know if it was just the camera angle or if he really got like great connection on it, but it just looks like he just kills Williams on it. I really liked the moves Shelley did to work over the neck. I thought looked good. He does like a curb stomp to Doug Williams, but it's with Doug Williams not lying on the mat. Doug Williams is just doubled over, standing on his feet, and then Shelley takes a running start and just curb stomps him to the mat, which looked really great. What else? That's most of it. Oh, and he also at one point does just a million knee drops to the back of Williams' head and neck. And I thought that was one of those things, again, when I'm talking about why the pure rules seem arbitrary to me sometimes, is because one of the 3 pure rules is no closed fist attacks. Shelley gets warned here for no fist drop. Yet in the same match, he can like drop like 10 straight knees to the back of a guy's head, and that's perfectly okay. And to me, that's one of those examples where then the pure rules just feel so arbitrary. Like, well, punching a guy in the head, that's not good pure technical wrestling. But kneeing a guy in the head 10 times, that's pure wrestling, baby.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just gotta ignore the pure wrestling aspect of the name because it makes no sense.
I mean, the other 2 rules in a way make sense if you except for the fact that, as we talked about earlier in the year, the Pure Rules, Gabe would say it's not about technical wrestling. Some people think it's about technical wrestling. It's about competition at its purest. I feel like the Pure Rules do kind of make sense if you think it's just about technical wrestling, because the 3 rope breaks make sense because it's about keeping the match in the center of the ring, grappling on the mat and you not getting to the ropes. And likewise, the countouts make sense because it's about keeping the match in the ring and not a brawl on the outside. But like the idea that no fist drops, but you can still throw drop kicks, knees, clotheslines. That's the one rule that it just feels like a little arbitrary, especially that one. But anyway, still match of the night. I think we both agree, very good, not quite great, but best in-ring match of the night. That brings us to Gary.
By the way, if Punk really wanted to be a Jesse Ventura type heel, he would say the stuff that Jesse Ventura would say back in like the 80s, where if someone got to the ropes, Jesse would be like, "That's the coward's way out of the move."
So after the match, up next is the next segment, actually. We get Gary Michael Capetta making his way to the ring, and he gets a few boos, which is funny, to host what is billed as the final confrontation between Ricky Steamboat and CM Punk, because you see, since Steamboat wasn't wrestling, we couldn't say it's a match, but we're selling it as the final confrontation. Gary recaps that Punk recreated the classic ring bell attack on Steamboat that Macho Man Randy Savage did to him. He did that back in the last Philly Ring of Honor show. Gary introduces each guy. They get their own standard ring music. So Punk gets his lengthy introduction where his music really plays out long. But then when Gary introduces Steamboat, Steamboat's music hits and he just runs to the ring, just selling that he's furious with Punk after what he did to him on their last meeting. He starts brawling with Punk in the ring. And at first, Steamboat actually gets the better of Punk, and he lands a 12 count of punches in the corner on him. The crowd chants along. They fight back and forth a bit until Punk is able to pile drive Steamboat to a big chorus of boos and a few cheers. And then at that point, Punk is really getting control. Punk then tries to hit Steamboat with the ring bell again from the top rope, but this time Ricky cuts him off. He slams him from the top turnbuckle, and then he takes control. He beats down Punk a bit, and then he grabs the mic and the ring bell. Ricky still keeps calling Punk CM on the show, which he did on another show, which I love. He's the only person in the world that just goes, well, CM. But anyway, Steamboat talks about how Punk's attitude is awful, but he does have talent. He says, if you keep up this bad attitude, this 50-something-year-old man will keep kicking your ass. And then Steamboat is basically like, he really implores him, like, just change your ways. And then he asks, what choice are you going to make, Punk? Like, are you going to shape up, or are we going to just keep fighting like this forever? And then all 4 members of Generation Next come in and beat down Steamboat. At this point, Punk recovers. He grabs the mic and laughs maniacally. He says, Punk says, just seconds earlier, Steamboat was standing over me, and now I'm standing over you. Punk kind of teases joining Generation Next, where he says, I'm part of a new generation of talent. He then says Steamboat was right, though, that Punk has a choice. He can continue his ways or be the man that Steamboat believes he could be. Punk pauses, and then he says, I'm going to be that man. And he attacks Generation Next. He gets a big pop for that. This is the big CM Punk official babyface turn. Generation Next, though, gains the advantage because they have the numbers, 4-on-1. But then Steamboat recovers. He makes the save. The two of them take on Generation Next. They take him out. Punk even whips Roderick Strong into a Steamboat chop. So a little bit of teamwork. We get a big CM Punk chant after that, followed by a big chant for Steamboat. And then the 2 men stand in the ring and stare at each other for a while. Ricky offers out an outstretched fist. Punk replies, and they do a fist bump before Ricky leaves the ring and gives the ring, in a very classy move to Punk. And he even encourages the crowd to chant for Punk and give him another round of applause. And yeah, Matt, in my opinion, this went about as well as it could have gone. Just a predictable but very classic end to an angle where the heel, the veteran and the younger guy, they put things aside because they've learned to respect each other over all their battles. Yeah,
perfect. Just like a great famous ROH angle. Punk finally turns face. It was a long time coming. It worked. You don't really get too many nowadays. You don't really get too many like true face turns, and I think that was true even then. You get heel turns, but you don't get like really big moments where somebody turns babyface. And I think that Punk's turn is one of the more memorable ones. And Yeah, the only thing I have to even make fun of about this is when Steamboat is standing over Punk and he goes, "This is supposed to be the final confrontation." And he goes, "If you keep this attitude going, I'll continue to kick your ass." And it's like, yeah, but I thought this was the final confrontation, so you can't kick his ass anymore. But no, I mean, they Generation Next, they are perfectly positioned to be a part of this because they've been built up the past few shows and on this show as being, big time heels. It gets them over, it gets Punk over. The crowd reacted perfectly. Steamboat played his role great. I thought this was fantastic.
Yeah, and it's also great because we know that in 2 shows they're going to end the Moff and Whitmer and Second City Saints feud. So Gabe's already starting Punk's next big feud before the other one even ends. So he's got really nicely well lined up here. And that brings us to the 6-man tag team match main event. Samoa Joe and the Briscoes defeated the Rottweilers of Homicide, Ricky Reyes, and Rocky Romero with Julius Smokes by disqualification in 32 minutes, 30 seconds when Homicide threw a fireball that hit Mark Briscoe in the face. It did not go. I have some notes on that later we can talk about. And of course, huge angle after the match. But Matt, Joe said this was going to be the biggest 6-man tag in Ring of Honor history and just this biggest war. Did you think it lived up to Joe's hype at the start of the show?
Well, it was one of the longest wars. No, seriously, it was a very long match. In some ways, it was very, very good. Like, there were things about it. They kept the match moving the whole time. There's a lot of big moves, different segments and stuff. My knock on the match is it is too long. They take too long to get into the heat segment, which is basically the Rottweilers beating on Jay Briscoe. There's just too much time early on where they're just like kind of going back and forth, showing off their stuff, and that's good. But I think maybe if they cut that by like 3 or 4 minutes, it would have been a little better. But there's a lot of big moves here. Some good commentary too. I definitely enjoyed Punk saying that the Briscoes, they were born in a tree. It was the ugly tree, and they hit all the branches on the way down. But I have to say, I think we can both agree they have matured into ruggedly handsome gentlemen, wouldn't you say?
Definitely, they're already. I think once they come back on their next Ring of Honor run, that's when they're like, oh, you're a bit of a snack, Jay and Mark. But like, yeah.
At this They're kind of in their awkward late teen stage still, 20, 19, 20.
They're kind of getting out of it. Like they're definitely more handsome than they were like in the early Ring of Honor.
Yes,
they're definitely starting to become adults.
Definitely. Punk also talks about Ricky Noon, the legend of Ricky Noon, where they talk about on other shoot interviews. But basically, he says that Ricky Reyes is a salsa musician in Cuba called Ricky Noon, and he has a top-selling album called "I'm Too Drunk to Remember My Real Name." So that's some CM Punk highlight commentaries or commentary highlights. So as far as the rolling up in a ball, so Rocky Romero does this thing where he like basically gets in a ball and sticks out his arm, like outside the ball. And the baby faces, well, Jay in particular, is just completely befuddled by what to do with this. He doesn't know what, and CM Punk is on commentary just being like, kick him, just kick him. And Jay is just standing there looking like an idiot until he like gets so frustrated that he actually tags out. And then Mark is also confused, but he's convinced by Homicide to actually grab Rocky's hand, and Rocky gets him into an armbar. So it makes the babyfaces look totally stupid until Joe gets in, and Rocky tries to do it again, and Joe, of course, being the champion, just rolls him over and kicks him repeatedly in the head. So he is not stupid. But I don't know. I was like, what? Like, I think that's a good babyface spot, but I don't think it's a good spot for a heel to do against babyfaces, especially if they're going to fall for it. I don't know. Do you agree with that?
Well, it's also the kind of spot where it's such a memorable spot that you can only kind of do it in a company, I think, once or twice, because after that, every wrestler looks like, do you not pay attention to what's going on in the place you're working?
Yeah.
Like, you can't do it indefinitely. Like, honestly, this should have been the first and last time, in a way, in Ring of Honor for this spot, because, yeah, once Joe figures it out, it's like everyone should know, don't grab this guy's hand.
And Punk figured it out before anybody did. Because obviously that's what you do. But then, like, the match kind of goes into actually the faces getting the heat on Reyes, even to a point where Joe knocks Romero and Homicide off the apron so they could beat on Reyes some more. But But when Homicide tags in, they start beating on Jay's neck, and that's where they kind of take over the heat, including a point where Homicide hits like a Randy Orton-style draping DDT, but it's like a spiked DDT right on the top of Jay's head that literally makes Punk scream in horror.
Punk and Gabe both in unison are like, oh, like that's another one of those moments like that Jimmy Raveney where you can tell the commentary part of their job leaves, and it's like a legit reaction.
Yeah, and I think this is probably one of the better parts of the match where they're working on Jay. Homicide and Reyes get Jay on the ground and drag him and crotch him on the ring post, and then Rocky does a basement drop kick to Jay's head. I thought that was pretty cool. And they're working on him for a long time until Jay hits a Yakuza kick and Joe gets the hot tag. And this is a really good hot tag. Joe destroys everyone. Mark hits a flippy dive, but he lands on Jay. Then Joe throws Rocky over the top onto the Briscoes. So the Briscoes are really getting it on the floor. Homicide and Joe headbutt each other. And then Joe does his own twisty dive to the outside. Then everyone thinks Homicide's going to do the tope con hilo, but instead he flips off the crowd, which I think is a pretty good heel move. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so... we didn't even mention at the start of the match. I forgot to say this. They start off the match with the Rottweilers attacking the Briscoes and Joe during the introductions, and then Joe immediately tries to do a ole ole kick on Smokes. So Homicide cuts him off. So Joe throws Homicide onto Smokes, then does the ole ole kick onto Smokes, and Smokes, for everything you could say about him, does the most ridiculous sell ever to the ole ole kick, where he's eyes wide open, almost smiling and shaking. And it's I appreciate it, but also, do you really want to make the ole ole kick a comedy spot? But I think Smokes was pretty much out of it for a while at that point.
He does recover, I think, later, but at first, he's taken out for a while.
Yeah, I don't remember hearing much from him, and he's usually someone you hear from. But anyway, during this hot tag, they kind of... Rocky tries to get an armbar on Joe, but Mark hits a springboard drop kick, and then things settle down again, which I didn't expect. I thought they were going to go to the finish here, but things settle down. They kind of get the heat on Jay for a little while again. Reyes hits a Fisherman's Buster for 2. Jay hits another Yakuza kick and tags Mark, and they actually hit the springboard Doomsday device on Reyes, and it gets only 2, which I was surprised by. Mark goes for a shooting star press. And have you ever seen WrestleMania 19? Because that is what happens here. Mark goes for a shooting star press, but lands on the back of his head. It is crazy. And I guess it's because his boot was undone. And man, it was really scary.
I've got to ask you something. Do you think, is there an offhand chance that that's on purpose? Because remember, this happened. Wasn't this when the Briscoes wrestled Punk and Cabana when they lost the titles to them? Didn't Mark also screw up the shooting star press just like this? But it felt like this time he was really selling it goofy afterwards. On one hand, part of me feels like no one would be crazy enough to take that bump intentionally. But then part of me is if there was a person that would be that crazy, maybe it's Mark Briscoe.
Yes. I mean, is there any way to know that? Was that ever talked about? Because you'd think that if somebody intentionally landed on the top of his head from a shooting star press, that would be something that would be kind of legendary 15, 16 years later. Has anyone ever said that it was?
Not that I know of. But if it was another botch, it's pretty crazy that he had 2 close calls like that within a few months.
Well, keep in mind, he also lands on his head in a shooting star press in 2007 and really hurts himself extremely badly to the point where people were wondering if he was going to have to retire, if you remember that, where he does it onto the floor. Do you remember that?
Oh, I forget that, actually.
I think it was a match against maybe Naruki Doi and...
Oh, yeah, now I remember, yeah.
I forget, yeah. And was it Yoshino? I forget who his partner was. Yeah, it was really bad. So he has been known to do that. I don't know, man. I hope it wasn't intentional. I mean, I don't like it being an accident either, but I hope he didn't intentionally land on his head after a shooting star press, because I don't know. There's no way to do that safely. It's impossible. Yeah. But it was really scary regardless, and he looked completely glazed over, but managed to keep doing his moves, and he hit suplexes on Homicide and Reyes, and Homicide does like a double underhook off the top rope and then a tiger driver, but Joe makes the save. Joe hits this like crazy DVD on Death Valley driver on Homicide, and Romero breaks it up. And then Homicide goes to throw a fireball at Joe, but Mark pushes him out of the way, and it gets on Mark, and the fireball is in Mark's face and on the back of his head, and I don't even know what the hell's going on, but I hadn't seen this match in a long time. I did not expect that finish.
So we'll get to the finish in a second. I agree mostly with you. I think the match was good, but not. It was too long.
Yeah, there were great things about the match, but it just seemed aimless at different points.
It was aimless is a perfect word for this. Like, I feel like the median quality of these guys and what they were doing in the match was pretty good, but it just felt like it didn't really have much of a point. It felt like what it was, which is a kind of a six-man match with no real stakes that's just in the middle of these two feuds, like the Briscoes feuding with the Rottweilers and Joe feuding with Homicide and the rest of the Rottweilers. And they almost like, they're working it like they know it's going to end in a DQ finish and there's going to be a big angle, because they didn't really have a ton of story. And it just felt like it started good and kind of never, in my mind, never really got any better or worse. It just kind of had a hot start, and it was just guys that are talented trading moves for a very long time, but not quite at the pace of a big spot fest where you go, oh, it's thrilling they did it for third. Just good, steady work. And like you, I was shocked that they gave Reyes the kick out of the springboard Doomsday device. I thought that's a pretty big kick out to give in a random 6-man, although it was the main event, I guess. I like Joe, the dive train where Joe didn't, like you mentioned, Joe doesn't do the elbow suicida, and Mark, maybe because he's doing the shooting star elsewhere, he does a completely different dive than he normally does the shooting star to the floor. I like that Homicide took a cell phone call during the match, presumably to sell the upcoming surprise.
Oh, yes, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, just randomly he's just on the phone, and obviously you figured out why later on, but it was very random.
1994 Harlem Heat on the phone with Sensational Sherry vibes from this. So Punk did you notice Punk on commentary did something that we would rail on Gabe for, which is telegraph something because he has the knowledge. He goes at one point, I guarantee this match is going at least half an hour.
Yes, that's an obnoxious thing to say.
Yeah. It's like, gee, Punk, how do you know that? Because you're looking at the timestamp on the video you're calling right now. But I agree with you that DDT was just insane. The highlight of the match, probably. I think one of my problems also with this match, other than it being a little bit aimless or a lot aimless, is I would have liked a bit more Joe and a lot more Homicide. I actually felt like for a big main event to a show, Homicide and Joe are two of the best wrestlers in the match. And you get a significant amount of Joe, but for a 32-minute match, I could have done with a significantly more Homicide and Joe in this match. It was more of a Rottweilers Briscoes match than I maybe would have wanted. But anyway, going to the fireball, yeah, I kind of forgot this finish too. And I forgot that, for those who haven't watched it, there's a really awkward camera cut to a really weird angle where it almost looks like Mark Briscoe is lunging into the path of the fireball that is aimed at Joe. And we get some word on maybe why the awkward camera angle happened. Going to the Observer, Dave wrote from a live report, Homicide went to throw fire at Joe, who moved, and it was supposed to hit Jay Briscoe. Now, Dave clearly got that wrong because I think it was supposed to hit Mark, because it did. Dave writes, apparently it missed him as well, but he had to sell it for the angle. And then, apparently that was probably why that camera angle was so awkward, was maybe it didn't really hit him, and that was the best angle they could get.
Makes sense. I mean, it did look like it was on him, but maybe looked like more was on the back of him as opposed to his face.
Yeah. Either way, the camera angle, I think when you watch it, you go, wow, that's a weird camera angle. Something must have gone wrong. But at the same time, you don't really see anything going wrong. You just know, oh, that's a weird camera angle. They must have chosen it for a reason, but you don't see anything whiff. I can believe just on that camera angle, oh, it hit Mark Briscoe. And He immediately, that's a DQ. Jay immediately takes Mark to the back. Mark is holding his face. They're acting like it's super serious. Homicide takes out Ref Hansen out of anger for the DQ. The Rottweilers start to beat down Joe until Jay comes back with a steel chair. And I actually like that in a weird way, because that's like a common sense thing that you normally don't see in wrestling, where it's like Jay helps Mark to the back, but then he's like, I'm not going to forget what these assholes just did. Like, once I get him safely to the back, I'm coming back for you guys. And he does. He comes back with a steel chair. He's able to make a comeback, but then he gets distracted by Julius Smokes, who's recovered from earlier. The Rottweilers regain control, and Homicide taunts Joe on the microphone, and he says no one's going to stop the Rottweilers until out of nowhere, Low Key's music hits. That's right. Low Key comes out to a big chant. Low Key screams, he's back on commentary. Joe is really hurt, and he kind of crawls behind Low Key as Low Key stands in front of him. Joe then helps himself up to his feet using the ropes as Low Key just stares down the Rottweilers. And Key grabs the Ring of Honor title belt away from the Rottweilers, and he gets into a standoff with them. Big welcome back chant for Low Key. Homicide says this is his time, and Key disappeared. Key snatches the mic away from Homicide and says after everything he's worked for, everything he's poured his heart and soul into, how dare Homicide disrespect him and the Ring of Honor title? Key says no one will disrespect this title, and he pauses and then goes, except for me. And then he proceeds to turn around and smack Joe with the belt and beat on him. And, big crowd reaction, like, holy shit. Key has joined the Rottweilers. He gets back on the mic. He says the fans can cheer his name all he wants, all they want, but he's better than each and every one of them. Joe tries to fight back, and he has this really good emotion, like he's hurt, but he's just so angry that this is happening. He screams that he's going to fucking kill them, but he's still no match because, they've got the numbers on their side. They beat him back down. Homicide tears down a Ring of Honor ring banner, and he brings it into the ring as Key says, since he's been gone, Ring of Honor has been gone nowhere but down. He says from the shoddy talent in the locker room, and then he says something that you can clearly see his lips moving, but you can't hear it. We'll get to that in a second, and you hear the crowd go, oh, shit. And then the audio magically comes back, and we hear Key say the company was going to the top before he left. And then he stands on top of Joe's prone body while he holds the Ring of Honor title, and he says, the champ is here, Joe's big catchphrase. The Rottweilers pose on top of an unconscious Joe. They hold up the Ring of Honor banner as like a big photo opportunity, and Joe says, this is the new Ring of Honor. So pretty fantastic. This was the thing where I remember following this live 15 years ago, or 16 now, maybe even, and being like, holy shit, when I'm reading that this happened. Like, it wasn't maybe necessarily in my mind that Key could never come back to Ring of Honor after the bad exit he had the year before. I mean, he did come back for that one match, the second year anniversary four-way, where Ring of Honor apparently felt they needed something to get last-minute ticket sales. But to have him come back like in a big angle where it's clear he's going to be part of the company for a while, just a crazy moment. And Matt, before I ask about you, I guess we'll give a little bit of background. The Observer wrote at the time, the plans for now are to build the main events around the Rottweilers, and however long Low Key stays is gravy. A lot of the wrestlers were unhappy he was brought back after his falling out over problems doing a job. At this point, there was no plan for the Joe versus Low Key match that was hinted at by the angle. And then if you're wondering why something was bleeped out, PW Insider has that. Well, not bleeped out, but just made silent. For those wondering, Low Key's comment about Ring of Honor's boy-touching owner was something he said on the mic himself and not something that was booked. As you can imagine, nearly everyone involved in the company stopped and did a double take when it was said. The comment will be edited off the videotape release of the show. Ring of Honor's management wasn't happy that the comment was made, but were otherwise thrilled with the reaction to Key's return. So, yes, that was the comment in the middle of this rant about how Ring of Honor had gone downhill. Low Key literally said they had a boy-touching owner. And yeah, probably in a time when you're in probably having some agreement to not disparage Rob Feinstein as part of like the sale. Yeah, you definitely don't want that making DVD. But Matt, I mean, what did you think? This was a pretty major angle in Ring of Honor history.
All-time classic angle. Like, one of the best in the history of the company. went off without a hitch, I would say. From the beatdown of Joe and Jay to the pop that Loki got coming out to the way the drama when he was staring at them, like the Rottweilers, the welcome back chants, the mic work, the moment where he hit Joe with the belt. It was fantastic. Couldn't have been any better. And it's really set the table for the next year of ROH. Home run all around.
My one problem with this was I so badly wanted to see Low-Ki versus Samoa Joe again after this. And as mentioned there, they never – it does the thing, Vince McMahon has reportedly said this, although he's broken his own rule, but apparently in the past he's gotten really mad about the idea of never build a match you can't deliver. And – yeah, they really at the end of this night,
cough Samoa Joe. I mean, cough Steve Austin and CM Punk, but
exactly, yeah. But at the end of this night, you desperately. In fact, I'll admit, after this match, not only was this the match I wanted to see most in Ring of Honor, I thought Joe's going to lose the title, and it's going to either be to CM Punk or Low-Ki, and I thought there was a good chance Low-Ki would win the title back. Obviously, I wasn't really aware of how Gabe booked or stuff like that, but not only does that we don't get that result, we don't even get the match, which is just.
Well, that's not
the one thing.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call that a problem with this particular exact angle. It was a problem with the longer-term booking of it. It's weird. I don't know why they never pulled. I mean, everyone wanted to see that match for a really long time. I guess they just couldn't get the two parties to agree on what would happen. I mean, it was sort of like I guess Paul Heyman, holding off Rob Van Dam winning the ECW title until it was too late, right? I guess there was part, but and then so maybe Gabe was just trying to hold off until the right moment, and the right moment never came. I don't know what it was, but it's disappointing.
Well, remember, Key left Ring of Honor in late 2003 when Gabe was going to build up to a final match for Key and the company. Well, not the fight. Actually, apparently, as we talked about at the time. Key was going to wrestle Homicide. He was going to end that feud and put over Homicide, and then they were going to have a couple more kind of farewell matches for Key that he would actually win. And Key, I guess, changed his mind late that he did not want to lose to Homicide. He wanted some kind of draw or something, and that's the falling out. So part of me just thinks maybe Gabe just didn't trust Key ever again to put if you notice, Key never gets a title ever again in the company. He doesn't get the pure or even the tag titles.
It's true, but he does put him in some important matches.
He does, but even matches though where I'm not 100% sure of this theory, but even if you go back to that thing I just read from the Observer, or I forget if that was the Observer or the Torch or whatever, where they said something anything they get from Low-Ki is gravy. The way they're talking, it's almost we don't know how long things are going to, this relationship's going to last, so we're going to enjoy it while it's here,
Yeah, and it ends up with Low-Ki being there for, I don't know, a year and a half or longer.
Yeah,
so
as far as relationships with Low-Ki go, that's a pretty good length.
Yeah.
You get another year and a half out of it. So
yeah.
And another thing is, one thing I thought was interesting, and I don't think they intended to do this, obviously, but it's kind of interesting. They were building in 2003, obviously, for a fair chunk of the year, the idea of this Homicide Key feud where everyone knows they're good friends, and Key and Homicide, there's that trainer relationship. But the idea that Homicide lost his big first world title match with Joe because he got distracted when Key and Smokes were arguing on the outside. And Key and Smokes kept arguing in 2003, and Homicide was caught in the middle. And eventually Homicide started getting mad at Key and was like, you've forgotten where you came from. Key was mad because he thought they were acting like street thugs. And he was mad. And Homicide was like, you forgot where you came from. And in a weird way, even though I don't think this wasn't part of the plan, this angle is kind of like Key admitting that Homicide was right, because he becomes a heel and he joins the Thugs and joins Smokes, and in a weird way it does kind of tie up that angle without really intending to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It works on so many levels. It's great.
Yeah. So I like that too, where it's one of those things where it even makes sense in a way that maybe it wasn't even initially intended to. So we cut to Sugar Sean Price backstage. He finds Special K, most of them who want to party, but Dixie and Angel does say the party is over. The rest of K disagrees, and they get into a brief shoving match before Dixie and Angel Dust leave. Sean tells us that we'll be back next time with Death Before Dishonor. So that's the final little segment. That ends the show. Before we get into our comments, I'm going to go into a couple other people's comments on the show. First, from the Pro Wrestling Torch, let's get Gabe Sapolsky's opinion. The Torch wrote, Ring of Honor booker Gabe Sapolsky thinks this past weekend's event in Elizabeth, New Jersey was among the best Ring of Honor events to date. Quote, it was definitely one of my favorite shows yet, he tells the Torch. We took the Reborn completion name very seriously and wanted to live up to that. Ring of Honor has been in the process of reinventing itself over the past several months, and all that ended last night as we are completely fresh up and down the roster. We've also fine-tuned our in-ring style. The Ring of Honor product is now a very fun product for everyone to enjoy, with the basis still being great wrestling. So, without tipping my hat, I will say I don't think this was one of the best shows Ring of Honor has done to date, but it is interesting the way he described the very end where he goes, the Ring of Honor product is now a very fun product. Like, was it not?
For everyone.
Now everyone can enjoy it. And then finally, I go back to the Bruce Mitchell. The Torch back at this era was doing roundtable reviews where everyone gave it a score out of 10 of these shows. And Bruce often, I felt, was kind of crotchy and not really on the level of Ring of Honor. Like, he wasn't, I don't think, completely understood. He actually gave the show a 7 out of 10, which is not a bad score. And he, I might even give it that. I don't know. But first off, he starts with this really weird joke, Matt. This is how he starts his review. Ring of Honor Reborn, the conception. Ring of Honor Reborn, the Lamaze class. Ring of Honor Reborn, midterm. Ring of Honor Reborn, the completion. I look forward to their next release, Ring of Honor Reborn, the placenta.
Okay.
Matt, what the fuck is he talking about?
Man, that rascal.
Well, I know what
that classic satirist. Bruce
Mitchell. When I think of completion, I'm thinking about just, I don't know.
I think he's making fun of the Reborn part.
Oh, the Reborn, I guess. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. Bruce, you're old. Okay, boomer.
He was, I mean, how old was he? Was 6, this was 16 years ago. He was probably the same age we are now.
Go.
No, I don't think that's true. But you know, it is 16 years ago.
So anyway, Bruce writes, anyway, this is another good show. I don't really understand why every match has to be a 6-man or an 8-man or a 4-way, but the first 8-man was really good. Matt, there was not an 8-man tag on this entire show. I don't know what he's talking about.
I think, he said the first one, right? So I assume he meant the first 4-way, and he just messed up.
Then he goes, the 6-man main event with Samoa Joe and the Briscoe brothers versus Homicide and the Rottweilers was almost as good as that first 6-man. And again, what the fuck are you talking? And he goes, the blow-off of the Rick Steamboat CM Punk feud was smart, and the return of Low Ki was too, except it was the exact same angle and should have been saved for 6 weeks later. Okay.
It was not the exact same angle.
Exactly.
They were both turns. I guess in that case, there were 2 turns on the show. I guess you could argue that's too many, but it was not the exact same angle.
And then Bruce wrote, I like this show. I like the product, but things like the silly Colt Cabana fall from 20 feet onto some skateboarders and Homicide's use of flash paper are out of context. Ring of Honor fans aren't Detroit chic marks. So I will say, I think like this review kind of encapsulates why I thought Bruce kind of missed the mark on Ring of Honor a lot, where it's just like, he kind of feels like he has his finger on the pulse of what Ring of Honor is and what their fans want, and I don't think he really does. Like, that angle, everyone loved it. No one was going, boo, flash paper. Like I don't know what, like, that Low-Ki angle was white hot. It's weird stuff to be like, I don't think that's what Ring of Honor excels at. Well, it was the best part of the show.
Yeah.
But
one of the best angles they ever did.
Yeah, Matt, how'd you feel? Like, it's weird from a in-ring standpoint. It's not far from the best show they've ever done, but this show is about, I feel like, so much more than in-ring. So how do you think how does it all add up to you?
Yeah, if you want to look at it from Gabe Sapolsky's perspective as the booker and say this is one of the best shows they ever did, I wouldn't begrudge him that statement. Like, he did a bunch of major angles on this show that worked like a charm. And with the benefit of hindsight, it's almost even better. You know, CM Punk had a really good babyface run. The Rottweilers were a great stable for that year. This really was the rebirth of ROH. So yeah, from an in-ring standpoint, I would say the show was below ROH's standard. But from a booking standpoint, this was a home run all the way around. Like, you know, there was some not so great stuff. I didn't love the Carnage Crew stuff, but you know, that was sort of like finishing off some bad booking from before. You know, all the big new stuff, including, by the way, Jimmy Rave's return. You know, all paid dividends down the line. So a lot of big angles that worked really well, that were memorable. You know, getting all the players into the right position. I thought the booking was fantastic on this show. So if you want to say it's one of the best shows that you ever did, Gabe, at that point, go ahead. I'll give it to you.
Yeah, it's funny. One of my discoveries rewatching Ring of Honor 2004 with you is there's been multiple shows this year where I felt like I always have kind of like two minds when I watch these shows, where I'm reviewing it from my standpoint, which is someone that, you know, was along for the ride for a lot of Ring of Honor to begin with, and is rewatching these shows, not watching them for the first time in most cases, and I'm watching them all in chronological order. And so from that perspective, this was a fantastic show in my opinion. But there's also a few shows this year where I know if you don't have all that context, if you're just a person getting it blind that wasn't around for the era, doesn't really deeply know the storylines and characters, some of these things aren't going to be as impressive to you. Like, I don't think the low key thing is as cool. I think it's still cool, but I don't think it's as cool if you haven't been following along. And so this is another one of those shows. I think they've had a few this year where it's way better if you've been watching the product every show. And I agree with you. Like, I thought the last show, I really like Gabe's booking, and I feel like this is an era we're entering a period right here where Gabe's booking, this is really, I think, him at his sharpest. There's so many good angles up and down the card and good character moments and things that just feel like they're happening. But I think especially one thing I noticed on the show is Gabe has got a really nice balance at this point, where on most shows, like, there's always something starting, there's always something ending, and there's always things in the middle. Like, you get a nice blend of everything where, you know, like something like the pure title thing, finally we get a new champ, and the Carnage Crew storyline ends. Not that was really looked forward to. And then you've got things like the Prophecy, Second City Saints feud is in the middle, but it's almost over. And then you got stuff like, you know, the Special K breakup is continuing, and the Hydro thing, you know, reaches a new level with the Jay Lethal name coming back. And, you know, there's all sorts of things at the beginning, middle, and end, up and down the card. And it makes it a really fun, it makes you excited to see the next show because it feels like everything's always progressing.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. It's definitely a golden era for ROH booking, and it's remembered as such, and it is, so.
And so that actually brings us to the end of the show. And before we plug how that era progresses into our next episode, we should just plug ourselves. So if you want to follow us on Twitter, I'm at Trevor Dame on Twitter, DAM as in Mother E. Matt is at Mayor MGF. We have ThROH The Years at gmail.com, ThROH spelled THROH. And we're also have a thread on the Pro Wrestling Only message board in the plug section if you want to comment there. And I also have a really stupid Patreon that is completely not related to this, that you don't have to subscribe to. But if you like really bad writing about and dumb jokes about really weird Impact Wrestling fans, that is www.patreon.com/Mecca. That's MECCA twice in a row. And again, to remind you, Matt is on the recent episode of the Pro Wrestling Super Show. On the Voices of Wrestling Network, he's on the last episode of 5-Star Match Game. So if you want more Matt Feuerstein in your life, and who doesn't, you're only listening to one of 3 possible podcasts in the last month that you could be getting from that. You got 2 more chances to get them this month alone.
And again, these people don't exist, but thank you.
Oh, come on. So next time we will be covering Death Before Dishonor 2 Part 1, the slightly confusing name because they turned the second Death Before Dishonor into a double shot. We're going to get Homicide versus Samoa Joe one more time in the blow-off of their singles feud for this time period at least. We're getting CM Punk and Colt Cabana defending the tag titles versus the Briscoes one more time in the blow-off to that in a 2 out of 3 falls match. Alex Shelley gets an immediate rematch against Doug Williams in what we agreed was the best match on this card. Plus, Low Key's return to Ring of Honor in the ring. Just a lot of stuff. A really good-looking double shot coming up.
Yeah, very good looking. I'm raising my eyebrows.
And that'll be it. So, Matt, do you have anything else to say?
No, thanks everybody for listening. We're going to try to be back a little faster this time. The next show is shorter, so it seems more doable. So we will try. March is coming soon. It's coming in like a lion, and it's going to come out like through the years.
And until next time, have a good time. Have a great time.